Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is a story about what if godlike Naruto was in akame ga kill. Before I start, please support for more amazing content and do consider subscribing to my channel and share this video with your friends. This is written by Outcastfur and link in description and support writer. Let's start the video. Naruto sprinted forward and clashed against the defense of the enemy before him. He narrowed his eyes before suddenly being pushed back with so much force that the very ground was moved along with him. The blonde tumbled back, crashing against the rocks and flipping backwards before coming to an abrupt stop a decent distance away. So this is where it all ends? Naruto asked, rubbing away a trickle of blood from his bruised cheek. The seemingly untouched enemy before him nodded in return and pointed in his direction. For you most certainly. For your legacy most definitely. This is how you end Naruto. Every shinobi that has ever existed is now gone. Wiped out by your choices. You are an extinct race, she echoed, a long white spear forming in her hand as she got back into a fighting stance. The age of man and shinobi are over. Naruto clenched his teeth at her words as he looked all around them. Nothing but ashes and bodies. A burning sky stood above them and a smoldering earth below them. But the shinobi knew he just knew that they were alive somewhere in all of that. He couldn't give up. Not now. So he put on his signature smile as blood began to drip down his left sleeve, a sparking yellow chakra circle in his right hand. He tightened his nearly destroyed headband before staring his opponent down. You're forgetting. I'm still a shinobi. Chapter 1. Sacrifice. Sasuke. Naruto screamed out as he rushed through the portal after his friend. The raven-haired boy sneered as he began to form hand signs. But Naruto beat him to it. He smashed his fist into the boy's cheek, sending him flying forward. Tumbling through the portal. Naruto hot on his heels. Don't run away from this. Naruto shouted out, gripping onto Sasuke's tattered jacket as the portal engulfed them both. Taking them into the oblivion. Once I kill you here. Once I sever the last bond. I'll return to our world and start anew. If anyone tries to stop me, I'll put them to the ground. Kage. Kakashi. Or even Sakura. He cursed back, backhanding Naruto, pushing him away as the other end of the portal appeared below them. The blonde quickly recovered and propelled himself forward to his friend. Don't give me that crap. I'm not going to let you do that. You're coming home with me. We'll end this. He snarled, smashing into Sasuke just as the two came out the other end. They were both met with a bright lush blue sky, but neither of them paid that any mind. They didn't know where they were and neither of them cared. All of their focus was on each other. Sasuke quickly retaliated against Naruto with a swift uppercut. Yes. Let's end this once and for all. He grinned, kicking the blonde towards the ground below at an insane speed. Naruto clenched his teeth as he neared the surface of the world. A lush forest was all he could see below him. The blonde braced for impact just as he collided with treetops. Smashing down towards the ground, everything around him was instantly ripped to shreds as he skidded on top of the earth. Damn it. He cursed out, quickly slowing himself down before his brother could catch up to him. But even still the Uzumaki could sense Sasuke's chakra closing in. He swiftly spun around, a Rasengan instantly appeared in his right hand. With a firm resolve, Naruto smashed his ball of chakra against Sasuke's incoming Amaterasu blade. His Rasengan grinded against the black blade while he began to snarl out. Why won't you just listen? Just listen to me for once. I don't want to kill you, Sasuke. The time for talking is over, Naruto. Let our actions speak. The Uchiha shouted, his Amaterasu blade disappearing. Naruto's eyes widened. That could only mean one thing. The Uchiha soon disappeared before him, only to instantly appear behind him. A purple energy surrounded his body as he laid an unholy kick onto Naruto's back. A sickening crack soon followed as the blonde was forced forward a massive distance and at lightning speeds. Og. Naruto coughed out as he tumbled across the ground at an unimaginable speed. Cutting up the earth below him. Shredding all the trees as he crashed through them with no sign of stopping. Then after another second of this he soon exited the forests and collided into a nearby mountainside. All under 5 seconds. Naruto clenched his teeth in pain from the violent impact. Blood running down his forehead and from his mouth. Down below in the forest, Sasuke narrowed his eyes as his entire body became bathed in purple energy. Susanoo. He uttered as his giant avatar of chakra formed around him. Rising him high into the air, soon dwarfing all the trees around him. After a few seconds the giant purple humanoid formed a long purple bow, followed by a large blue lightning arrow. It took aim at the mountainside as the lightning around it began to gather. The very ground shaking beneath it. Sasuke was preparing to end this all. In one go. Andora no ya. Just as the words uttered from Sasuke's mouth, his Susanoo released the mighty arrow from the bow. Sending it racing towards Naruto. The ground beneath it disintegrating as it passed above. Back on the mountainside, Naruto had barely any time to recover by the time his eyes laid upon the arrow. But as they did, a powerful essence of yellow and orange chakra took shape around his body. Flowing and forming around him, Naruto closed his eyes just as the arrow impacting next to him. A bright flash soon followed, as Sasuke had to look away for a moment. But soon after averted his eyes back only to be amazed at his raw power. In a matter of seconds, a large mushroom cloud appeared in place of the top half of the mountain. Nothing but molten rock and rubble below it. Nothing could have survived that. Nothing. Not even his stupid friend. He had to be dead, he just had to be. Are you happy now, Naruto? Look at what you made me do. He shouted, narrowing his eyes as they slowly began to bleed. A maniacal expression soon filling his face as he fell to his knees inside his Susanoo. You were a good-for-nothing loser. But you were still my friend. My brother. He suddenly screamed as he smashed his fist into his Susanoo. You made me do this. It was all your fault. But I had to. The Uchiha cried out. Not noticing the ground move beneath him. After a few more seconds of his emotional episode, Sasuke stood back up with a smirk. I'm finally rid of you. My last bond. My last brother. He uttered, his face returning to its neutral state before he continued to speak aloud. Now all that's left is the other-tailed beast and the Hokage. He spoke, beginning to focus chakra into his Rinnegan. Wanting to create a portal home. Away from wherever this place was. No you don't. A voice screamed out just as Naruto came crashing from underneath. A bright yellow chakra fist uppercutting Sasuke's Suanoo into the air. Sasuke gasped just as the blonde followed after him. Laying into the purple humanoid. Punch after punch with his chakra fists further into the sky. Naruto clenched his teeth, beginning to form a tailed beast ball in his hands. Determined not to let Sasuke get an opening on him, I'm ending this now. He added, getting right up to the Susanoo's forehead and pressing the tailed beast's ball into it. Sasuke's eyes widened as the ball quickly grinded into the purple chakra. He looked at Naruto, then back to the ball, just as the Susanoo began to crack around it. Sasuke was taken back for a second, but swiftly found a solution to the problem. He instantly dispelled his Susanoo before forming a black Amaterasu blade and slashing against the tailed beast ball. Thus flinging both of the jutsus away from their users. Leaving them both open. This time I'm going to make sure you're dead. Sasuke screamed, a blade of lightning soon forming in hand. Naruto didn't speak, he simply acted. Taking Sasuke's words to heart. He formed two Rasengans and pushed them towards his foe, just as his opponent's Chidori finished charging up. Sasuke in turn lunged towards his friend, ready to end it all. Both forces of chakra neared each other and soon slammed into themselves. Both shinobi clenched their teeth in the air. Time seemingly stopping for them as the air filled with energy. You're not going to win, you idiot. Naruto screamed, pushing his Rasengan downward with full force. But the aid of gravity, Sasuke was sent hurtling towards the ground as Naruto shouted in rage. Just stop, please. And never. The raven-haired boy screamed in return as they both neared the surface of the earth. Not even a moment later, they both impacted into a large field. A massive shock wave shook the surrounding area as Naruto continued to drive his Rasengans into his Chidori. Both seemingly unfazed by the fall. Sasuke grunted as Naruto shoved one of his Rasengans into his chin. Flinging him forward across the field and into a rocky cliffside. Naruto panted, trying to catch his breath. Standing back up on his own 2 feet before suddenly clutching his side, tch. He grunted, knowing full well he had broken more than a few ribs from that fall. This has to end, and faster. I won't last much longer. He thought to himself, looking back to the rocky cliffside. Just in time to catch the sparkling beginnings of another mighty Indra arrow. Naruto. It's time to finish this. He heard Sasuke scream from the other end of the field. Both of them knew this was one of their final moments. Nothing more could stop this. Nothing could prevent this. No words, no actions. This was the end. Naruto clenched his teeth in frustration, just as he felt a familiar presence flood his mind. You're the only one that's left, kid, end this. Kurama growled. The blonde mentally nodded to his tailed beast and began to slow his breath. He narrowed his eyes and focused a large amount of chakra into his palms. Time began to slow as something large formed in his hands. He looked toward Sasuke, blood dripping down both his hands as he began to growl, Riken. Kirin. Sasuke shouted, appearing behind Naruto in an instant. A large pillar of lightning dropping from the sky as he did, and Naruto. He added, stuttering as his lighting dragon dropped from the sky and grabbed a hold of Naruto. The entire area was set ablaze as the grass was charred away, Aang. Naruto screamed out as he surprisingly gripped the jaws of the dragon. Sasuke's eyes widened in shock at his friend's actions. I'm not done yet. He snarled, looking over at him. The raven-haired boy's eyes widened in anger, Non. Just die already. He screamed, lightning forming into an oversized bolt of energy in his hands. Naruto visibly jumped at this as Sasuke narrowed his already bloodshot eyes at his friend. Preparing to launch his energy bolt. Ah. Naruto. Naruto clenched his teeth as Kurama's familiar orange flame surrounded his hands as he quickly formed his most powerful jutsu yet above his palms. A beautiful swirling mass of energy formed like a star above him. Within nanoseconds it was fully formed as a hurricane force wind shuriken surrounded. Naruto looked up at Sasuke who stared in anger and hate. He clenched his fist in response before whispering aloud, "I'm sorry." Just before unleashing his attack towards the Uchiha. Endora no ya. Rikudl, Ldama Rasen Shuriken. Each of the brothers' words echoed aloud just as the attack struck each other. Time seemed to freeze for a moment as all was quiet. Both forces of chakra grinding against each other until finally a spark occurred between them and all hell broke loose. The sheer force that the attacks unleashed made the Ten Tails attack seem like firecrackers. The very rock beneath them simply ceased to exist. Everything. Even the very air and sky blew away as everything within a 10-mile radius was blown away but the sheer force of their attacks. A beautiful array of yellows and reds soon appeared as a massive mushroom cloud rose into the sky. This was the most powerful attack that this world had seen and yet it was just the beginning. Beneath it all. At ground zero, just about everything was molten rock and fire. Except two solid pieces of ground where two individuals still stood. Naruto and Sasuke. Give it up Sasuke. Thias destruction. It's enough. The Uzumaki stuttered out, gripping his chest. His clothes seared and torn from the blast. But Sasuke wasn't having any of it. He simply discarded his destroyed grey jacket and lunged at Naruto. Running across the molten rock, on. He yelled, using a part of his last remaining chakra reserves to form one last Chidori. Naruto clenched his fist in frustration and ran towards him. Creating two clones behind him, "Why won't you listen to me? Just listen." He pleaded as Sasuke created two clones of his own. "Just shut up. End this. End this." Sasuke screamed as the trios collided with each other. The first pair of clones instantly dispelled as the Naruto tackled the Uchiha into the molten rock while the second pair clashed their kunais above the originals. "Sasuke, stop. Please don't make me." Naruto pleaded as he swung Sasuke's arm back, keeping the Chidori away from them. But Sasuke kept pushing and pushing against him. His lighting blade getting closer and closer to Naruto's heart. The Uzumaki looked into Sasuke's eyes, expecting to see some form of remorse or compassion. But all he saw was pure rage as the blade just about reached his heart. "End this." Sasuke roared out, pushing his blade forward. Inches away from contact on Naruto's skin. "NNHHNNN. Do it." Naruto shouted out as Sasuke grinned in satisfaction just as a blue spiraling orb pierced through the Uchiha's chest from behind. Destroying his heart on contact and splattering Naruto with his blood leaving them both stunned. Naruto's clone looked over from Sasuke's back, nearly in tears. I'm sorry," he said before disappearing into a puff of smoke. Leaving Sasuke to fall into the blonde's arms. Unceremoniously. Naruto clenched onto him keeping him from falling into the molten rock, as Sasuke. He coughed before grasping Naruto's right hand tightly. I let you win that." With a small smirk before roughly coughing. Blood splattering against Naruto as Sasuke quickly preformed the hand sign to undo the infinite Tsukiyomi back in their world. After a second he lost his grip on his hand and then smirked faintly. As a portal opening up behind the two and now head home. There's no you saving me. But thank you. You won Naruto. Good job brother. He panted out just as the life in his eyes left for good never to be seen again. Naruto held him in shock. His mind fully not registering what had happened. Sasuke. Sasuke, hey come on now. He said, shaking his body. Sasuke. Sasuke. He screamed out just as the molten rock beneath him began to shift. Quickly thinking of every option he could use, Naruto looked towards the portal. His eyes widened. Sakura. He shouted out beginning to run over to the opening. But just as he was about to reach it the very ground beneath him began to collapse in. Damn it. He cursed out, his chakra almost running completely dry. "At least you can get out of here. Maybe she can save you," Naruto added, quickly tossing Sasuke's body through the shrinking portal. Just as the molten rock and earth swallowed him. NNGHHNN. Nu. Sasuke. Sakura. Hinata. Everyone. I'm sorry. He yelped out. His hand disappearing under the rock. And thus beginning a journey that would shape not only his world but another's as well. A place once connected to his. Now displaced by dark forces. A place that hid something. Even more dangerous than Kaju or Madara. A true ancient evil that was about to be awakened. Inheriting the will of Fire. Inheriting the will of fire Chapter 2. Revelation. And no. Don't touch her. Naruto suddenly jolted out, immediately sitting up in a simple bed. Throwing the covers forward as he panted loudly. Huh? He asked a second later, catching his breath and looking around. He was in a small room, with what looked to be wood walls, a closed door at the other end of the room. "Where am I? Kurama?" he asked, looking down at his stomach. "Hey kid. You alive?" The voice of his tailed beast echoed through his mindscape. "Why yeah. What happened? Where am I?" he asked, the connection to his tailed beast fading in and out in his head. Kurama seemed almost like a staticky voice or TV as he began to speak. "Why you been out for so long? I'm surprised you're alive. Listen, my connection still needs some time to readjust. But it's been over," and just like that the fox's deep voice faded away into nothingness. Kurama. "Hey, you there?" he asked, beginning to panic as he felt the tailed beast's energy return to the seal. This wasn't normal at all. He was about to head into the mindscape himself, but the sudden sound of a creaking floorboard caught his attention. Naruto darted his head to the door at the other end of the room, only to see the head of a small old man poke inside. "Finally awake, young man?" he asked, a humble smile soon filling his face. Yeah?" Naruto asked, partially stunned, as the older man began to walk to his bedside. It was at this point that all his physical features became apparent to Naruto. He walked with a severe limp, and with the aid of a worn-down cane, he was able to keep his balance. "What am I doing here, old man? Did you save me?" the blonde asked, raising an eyebrow. The man chuckled as he scratched his balding gray hair. "I'm afraid I did, boy. Not the person you were expecting?" he asked, looking up at Naruto. The man's pale blue eyes covered by a simple pair of glasses. Naruto shook his head. "Well no, I wasn't expecting anyone, honestly. How'd you find me? What is this place?" "I found you up at the cooled lava crater. About 20 miles north of here," he revealed, placing a glass bottle filled with unique-looking pills onto the table next to Naruto. "As to where you are, you're in the northern tribes, my boy. Far away from the empire." Naruto's head began to spin upon hearing this. Northern tribes. Empire. Where was he exactly? Another country. That was a possibility, something he certainly couldn't rule out. He had to dig deeper first. The last thing he remembered was sinking into the molten rock after throwing Sasuke into the portal. He should be dead right now. Sasuke had have sent them to another country. He certainly wasn't capable of sending them anywhere else. Especially at his power level. Or could he? The blonde just had to find out. "I'll try to make sense of this. More importantly, where exactly was I when you found me?" The old man seemed to chuckle again at this. "It's quite interesting, my boy. I seemed to have tripped over your hand as I was walking across the hardened rock. It took a couple of hours and more than a few of my very best tools to get you out, but when I did." He trailed off laughing. "Oh, the haircut I had to give you. You would not believe." Haircut?" Naruto asked, feeling his head. His eyes widened in an instant. Something wasn't right. He needed to find a mirror immediately. Throwing the covers forward, Naruto began to jump out of bed. "Do you have a bathroom, old man?" "Why yes. Directly to your right as soon as you leave the room," he said, raising an eyebrow. "Thank you so much," Naruto shouted, running out of the room at inhuman speeds. "Boy must need to go bad," the old man said to himself before shrugging. But I would too if I was under there that long as well." Naruto nearly slammed the door to the bathroom shut before drawing his attention to the sink and mirror at the other end of the room. He rushed over to look at himself, trying to figure out what was wrong, only for his own eyes to widen in shock when he saw himself. I don't understand. What's going on?" he stuttered to himself. Before him in the mirror still lied his normal self, although something seemed off. His chin was more defined than it used to be. As well as the bangs on the right side of his face drooped down, moreover his bruised and battered headband than the other side. Did he seem older? Finally noticed. "Did you, kid?" the sudden low voice of his tailed beast asked. His presence flooding back into Naruto's mind. Naruto's face brightened up with a smile. "Kurama. You're okay?" Worried about your old fox, were ya?" the fox asked with a deep chuckle as the blonde rubbed his chin. Seeing this, Kurama rolled his eyes, moving on Naruto. "I assume you would like to know what exactly is going on." Naruto let go of his chin and mentally nodded. "Yeah, I'd like to know. And why do I look like this? How long has it been?" Kurama sighed aloud. Knowing that telling Naruto this would certainly shake him up pretty good, but nevertheless, he had to do it. "It's been approximately 2 years since your fight with the Uchiha," he revealed. Naruto held his breath as his eyes went as wide as the moon. I'm sorry, what?" he asked, an audible stutter heard in his tone. "The battle, Naruto," he began, "it was not just fought in the physical dimension. But also the spiritual dimension." The old man watched the entire thing go down. He had the final say on what to do with you after it was all said and done. "By old man you mean?" he asked, trailing off as he continued to look at himself in the mirror. "The old sage." Hagoromo Kurama growled. Slightly annoyed that Naruto could forget about one of the most important figures for all of shinobi and tailed beasts. I don't understand." Naruto shot back, gripping the sides of the sink and looking down in confusion and frustration. With his fleeting words, he asked us to make sure you stayed in this world. Sasuke's eyes beamed in on Kagaya's nexus. Her home. This was no chance transportation. You were brought here for more than a simple fight with the Uchiha. Hagoromo sensed something when we arrived. Worse than his own mother. Kurama revealed. How has it been 2 years though? The blonde asked, looking up at himself in the mirror. His younger teenage self gone. You can thank us tailed beasts on that one. Normally you would have died falling into that molten rock. But we were able to form a protective chakra barrier around you until it cooled, but once that happened you were already buried and we were all low on chakra. So we used everything we had to keep you alive in a coma-like state for the past 2 years. You continued to age until that man found you and was able to nurse you back to health. The Nine Tails explained, with a low grumble. Naruto looked down one more time before pushing himself off the sink with a sigh. Seemingly coming to terms with their current situation, I see Kurama, do you think we'll ever be able to see home again? Can't tell you that, kid. Hagoromo didn't tell me and none of the other tailed beasts know, maybe one day. Kurama revealed. Naruto turned from the sink and headed back to the door. Yeah. Maybe one day. Now let's figure out why we're needed here. I can try to sort everything out later. Oh? Maybe it isn't just your body that's age. The fox chucked as Naruto mentally raised an eyebrow. What do you mean? If I got here, then I can find a way back. I owe it to Itachi, Nagato, and Obito get back. I'm not going to give up here. Believe it. He cheered. Ugh, never mind. Kurama groaned, rolling his eyes again. Naruto was about to make another snarky comeback just as he opened the door but quickly jumped in surprise as the voice of the old man echoed beside him. Excuse me. Young lad, are you alright? Were you talking to someone in there? You No. Just trying to get my bearings. Still a bit shaky from waking up. Naruto said, scratching the back of his neck as the old man began to walk towards the front room. Haha. Well, I'd be too. Don't worry about it. He chuckled, turning back to Naruto. Say, why don't you take a seat at the table and I'll prepare some food. You must be starving. Then you can tell me your story. Naruto nodded with a smile, his stomach sudden rumbling, causing him to give off one of his cheeky smiles. Now that you mentioned it. I am. Thanks, old man. No worries, lad. Now my granddaughter should be home any minute. She'll be excited to see that you woke up. She helped me take care of you after all. He smiled, walking over to the stove. Her name's Y. Knock. 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 Both of them drew their attention to the door as the old man began to walk towards it. Oh, that must be her now. Excuse me for 1 second. He said with a soft smile, walking up and slowly opening the sturdy wooden door. Yukari, you know you can always just walk in. This is your home to you. Naruto, the door. Kurama shouted out inside the blonde's mindscape. Huh? Naruto asked, turning his head towards just as the bright spark of light filled his eyes, followed by a massive rush of air. He covered his eyes as all around him was engulfed in flames. After a couple more seconds, the flames died down and Naruto slowly uncovered his eyes. But what he saw before him was something he wished you could unsee. Oh, old man? Naruto asked, stuttering in shock. Before him, the entire front of the house was blown and burned to a crisp. And at the very front laid the old man. Heavily burned and bruised on the ground. Naruto immediately rushed over to him. Supporting his head. Hey, old man. You okay? Hey. He asked, shaking him. Hang on. I can help. Naruto said, reaching his arm out towards his burns and cuts. But sadly the old man stopped him. And no, don't. Those men will kill my granddaughter if you don't stop them. I've lost too much blood. I'll be dead within minutes. He coughed out as blood started to flow out the side of his mouth. But. I can, Naruto began but was quickly silenced by the man. My time has come, kid. You can't deny me this, but before I go I do have a favor to ask of you. He coughed again. Blood splattering on his seared shirt. Why, yeah, sure, anything. Naruto clenched his fist. Angry with himself for not being able to detect the explosion in time. He failed this man, he had let him die. Find my granddaughter for me, take care of Yukari, please. I'm the only family she has left. Now she'll have no one. The old man stuttered weakly. More blood began to soak the wood below them. Yeah, sure, old man, you can count on me, Naruto said with a sad smile. Thank you. Now when you find her, go to the imperial capital. It's your best bet to find some help against those BBs. You got it, old man. You have my word. He clenched his teeth in pain, gripping Naruto's hand tightly. Now go. We found you for a reason. Do what you meant to do. The old man said as his eyes began to close. Naruto slowly let go of the older man's hand and got up from the floor. He walked up to the remains of the cabin doorway that lead outside. Hearing voices advancing towards them, Naruto began to focus his chakra around him and looked back to the man. I give you my word. I'll find her and protect her with my life," he announced, his chakra flaring as he walked out of the cabin. Towards the threat. "Haha. Good shot, Deidara. That old fuck never saw it coming." A high-pitched voice cheered out as Naruto walked onto the smoldering porch. "Well, that's what he gets for collaborating with the rebellion and night raid." A much deeper voice responded as Naruto zeroed in on the culprits. A few hundred feet away stood a group darkly clad men, search the remains. A little girl supposedly lived here too. If she's not in there, then she must be nearby. A tall man with a larger build barked. He had long, spiky blonde hair and pure white, pupil-less eyes and a devil-like headdress. "If she's alive, bring her to me. I do like to have fun with them," a smaller person announced, stepping out from behind the taller man. Naruto could tell that they were a boy from where he stood. But he looked so feminine. He had blonde hair and golden eyes. A headdress similar to the tall one, and strange tail for some reason. The other men around them all began to slowly advance towards the house, but all stopped dead in their tracks when their eyes landed on Naruto. "Hey, look there. Who is he?" Another man asked, looking back to their leader who stood confused at the appearance of the young man. This wasn't in the briefing. Who was he? Why was he here? And most importantly, why was his aura so strong? "Deidara?" the small blonde boy asked, looking up to the large man. The built man known as Deidara crossed his arms and huffed out, "Hey Whiskers. Who are you?" Naruto began to walk towards them. All of the men tightened their stance, readying the rifles in their hands. "Did you blow up this house?" Naruto asked. Deidara raised an eyebrow in confusion. "What? Listen, you little shit, I said who. Did you blow up this house?" Naruto shouted out, his chakra flaring out. Of course, he already knew the answer to the question. He just wanted the murderers to admit to their guilt. Deidara in the meantime was taken back for a second. But quickly brushed it aside as a sinister smile soon plastered his face. "We did, asshole. Did the old ding-dong ditch technique on the old fucker. Blew him to kingdom come. But that's what he gets for supporting the rebellion." He snickered just as another man came up behind him, carrying what looked like a smaller person on his shoulder. "Boss. I found her," he said, throwing the person on the ground. Naruto's eyes widened as the person's features came into view. A small little girl laid on the ground. Her hands bound behind her back. She had long flowing black hair with what looked like dog ear-like flaps of hair on each side. She had big bright blue eyes and was wearing a small jacket with a red scarf around her neck. She couldn't have been any more than 6 or 7. This must have been Yukari and she looked absolutely terrified. Deidara snickered again. "Excellent. Throw her here. Naya wants to get to know her a bit better." He motioned over to the smaller blonde now known as Naya, who smiled innocently at the little girl. But at this point, Yukari had regained her senses, just as the man who had thrown her on the ground picked her up again. She quickly began to struggle. "Let me go. Let me go. NGHHH. Grandpa. Grandpa. Help." She cried, tears beginning to slide down her cheeks. The man who was holding her chucked her over to Deidara, who caught her with ease. He quickly put her in a deadly headlock in front of Naruto and laughed. "Now if you would so kindly tell us who you are, and maybe I won't," but before the man could even finish his sentence, Naruto appeared in front of him, causing him to jump back just as Yukari was ripped from his arms. He stumbled, trying to regain his balance. "Why, you little shit. I'll show you." He roared just as a fist found its home square in his face. Everyone heard his teeth and jaw crack as he flew back into a nearby tree, splintering it in two as he flew back into another one. This repeated a few more times before he came to a stop halfway through a large oak. All of the men around Naruto began to fire in his and Yukari's direction. "Fuck. Shoot him. Kill him." A few of them yelled out as Naya stood there for a moment horrified at the actions he had just witnessed. He took out Deidara in one hit. How is this possible? In the meantime, Naruto had used Kurama's chakra to form a shield around him and Yukari. "Damn." He sighed, "I didn't want to kill anyone, but I might have to." Naruto quickly created a clone and directed him to Yukari. "Keep her safe. No matter what. I'll get you when this is over," he told his clone. A bright orange chakra cloak forming around his arms. The clone nodded and scooped up Yukari before jumping away into the trees, leaving some of the men confused, giving Naruto the precious moments he needed. Before any of them knew it, Naruto had already dispatched 2 of them. He chucked a third into a nearby tree. "Alright, 3 down. 5 more to go," he uttered, his eyes narrowing as he rushed the 4th. Taking out a kunai just as he began to open fire, Naruto dodged every bullet before digging his blade into the man's chest. "If they stoop so low that they'd kill a child, then they leave me no choice," Naruto shouted out, placing an explosive tag onto the guy's back and throwing him into another, blowing them both away in an instant. At this point, the remaining 3 men had run out of ammo and brandished their long swords, charging towards the blonde with no remorse. "Die, you murdering asshole. One of them shouted just as Naruto appeared in front of the face and landed a critical blow to his neck with his foot. The Uzumaki disappeared again, leaving the remaining two men going back to back with each other. Both terrified. Where the hell is he? I don't know. I don't know. He panicked, looking around just Naruto appeared to both of their rights. He grappled both of their heads and knocked them into each other, smashing both of their protective helmets. The last two men fell to the ground unconscious as Naruto stepped up to Naruto. I don't know who the hell you are, but you have no idea who you're messing with. I'm Naruto, one of the three beasts and I'll be. You talk too much. Naruto's voice echoed as he appeared behind him at lightning speeds. A Rasengan fully formed and aimed at his back. The smaller blonde gasped in fear as he tried to turn around in desperation. No, no. He screamed out as Naruto plunged his spinning yellow orb straight into his back. He screamed in pain as it launched him forward, spinning in an impressive rotation until he impacted the ground with a sickening crack. Naruto sighed, looking at his handiwork. What the hell is wrong with this world? He asked, turning around only to narrowly dodge a bullet-like water current fly past his face and impacting into a rock beside him, boring a hole clean through it. Naruto directed his attention to the direction of the current as another man stepped forward from the tree line. He tightened the gloves around his wrists and pointed one towards the Uzumaki, narrowing his eyes in anger. I have no idea who you are, but you severely injured my team. Mr. Esdith will be severely disappointed. I hope you made peace with your demons, because these are the last few breaths you'll be taking. He was a rather tall man with gray hair worn in a long ponytail, blue eyes and a mustache. He wore the same uniform like the other two, minus the ridiculous devil horns. The two stared each other down as Naruto once again focused Kurama's chakra into his arms. Not wanting to waste any more time, he rushed the man, moving faster than evil his enemy's water bullet. The gray-haired man snickered as he shot a barrage of water from his pocket directly towards Naruto. A powerful wall of liquid rushed at the blonde. The man smiled, knowing that his enemy had underestimated him like always. But he had never fought Naruto. As the wall approached him, the blonde simply rushed through the wall, the water harmlessly splashing against his body. This caused the gray-haired man to growl in angry, looking over to a nearby pond and commanding the water towards Naruto, who slid under the water, effortlessly approaching him. He disappeared just before reaching the man, causing him to panic. He looked all around, beginning to command more water to him, but Naruto beat him to it. He appeared under the man and socked him right in the chin, launching him into the air with a strong uppercut. Gang. He groaned as Naruto formed a Rasengan in his hand and went after him. Gripping onto his sides, Naruto slammed the man back down towards the earth with his orb. He spun out of control before impacting the ground just as the force from the Rasengan caused a massive explosion on top of him. Naruto had barely broken a sweat as he landed back on the ground. He looked over the gray-haired man, ensuring he was down for the count. Sure enough, he was out cold, his chest slowly rising up and down. Man, he sure talked a big game for someone to go down in one attack. Even still, if this is Kagaya's homeworld, you think people would be more powerful here? He asked himself. A blue blur suddenly appearing behind him. Who's Kagaya? A voice suddenly asked as Naruto turned his head only to have a sword narrowly miss his forehead. He spun around, rocked his elbow into his new opponent's arm, who caught it with a loud grunt. Naruto raised his eyebrow before pushing away from them and sliding to a stop a few feet away from them, now getting a clear view of his opponent. His eyes widened as he gazed upon her. Before him stood a tall, beautiful, and slender woman with long, light blue hair and blue eyes. She carried a thin silver sword, had a sinister smile plastered across her face. So you're the one who took out my best squad? She asked, staring Naruto up and down, seemingly inspecting him. The blonde nodded in response. Yeah. They killed an innocent man and almost murdered his granddaughter. His actions are unforgivable. The woman smiled, readying her sword. I like you seem to favor the moral high ground. But even you must know that the strong survive while the weak die. She shouted, rushing towards Naruto, suddenly launching several volleys of what appeared to be ice shards. The Uzumaki happily accepted her challenge, flaring his chakra cloak, causing the ice to melt from the intense heat. The woman's eyes widened as she met him halfway. She stabbed her sword forward just as Naruto ducked, getting into her guard and grabbing the sword's handle. He pushed the woman to the ground and began to grapple with her in a matter of seconds, her sword flying off just as Naruto pushed her to the ground. I don't know who you are, but it's the strong's job to protect the weak, so they can become strong. He barked. See, call me Esdith. She growled, struggling to get out of his grip. But even she had to admit it was vice-like and that it would certainly take a lot of work to even get an inch. Whoever this guy was, he might have been even too much for her to handle, and this honestly intrigued her. Well, Esdith, if you believe that the weak are destined to die, then you're the dumbest person I've ever met. Naruto growled, gripping her collar and picking her up. Esdith's eyes widen in shock. No one had ever countered her words before. She had always believed it was a law she must always go by. But now she had this powerful man she had just met going against it. Saying it was stupid. She had never been more drawn in. Who was he? How strong was he? Where did he come from? The woman struggled against his grip as she shot her foot up into his stomach, causing him to loosen his grip with a grunt. She quickly formed an ice dagger before launching it at Naruto, where it caught him off guard, hitting him square in the mouth. Esdith smirked, expecting his grip to loosen. Why wasn't it loosening? She asked herself. She looked back up to Naruto's only to audibly gasp. The blonde had caught the dagger in his mouth. He crushed the dagger in two with a smirk, like I said, Esdith. He bellowed, looking right into her eyes. Mere inches from her face, if you're strong then it's your duty to protect the weak. He announced. His eyes meeting hers. War emotion blue meeting cold ice. Esdith visibly blushed, she was at a loss for words for once. Here was this handsome man, appearing out of nowhere, taking out her best troops and manhandling her like it was nothing. Her heart seemed to skip a beat as for the first time butterflies appeared in her stomach. What was happening to her? This wasn't normal. Who are you? She asked. Naruto put on his signature smirk. I'm Naruto Uzumaki. Nice to meet you. That was it, that smile. That was the nail in the coffin. The great General Esdith had fallen in love with a man she had just met. What is this? Chapter 3. The Fateful Meeting. Akame, wake up. An unfamiliar voice called out inside the girl's minds. She tossed and turned in her bed. The voice echoing out again and again in her head. Only getting stronger. Come on Akame. Come on, hang in there, come on, damn it. Finally, as if something clicked off in her head. Her eyes suddenly jolted open. Glowing a strong orange. She barely had a moment to think before she was mentally swept away into an unknown feeling of darkness. What going on? She called out in hysteria. The girl now known as Akame slammed against the ground. Her eyes immediately opening and she hopped up to her feet. Trying to get a feel for her surroundings as she quickly realized that she was no longer safe in her room. But rather standing in the middle of a war zone. Akame slowly looked around and tried to move. Only to find out that she was unable to. Her feet staying in place by some unknown force. What is this? An imperial trap? Atigu? She asked herself. Watch and listen, girl. A feminine voice called out to her. Causing Akame to look all around for the source. Only to find it a moment later in the approaching figure. Not having many options, the assassin quickly got into a defensive stance just as a woman clad in all white robes walked up to her. Akame couldn't make out any of the woman's features as the hood of the robe covered all the way down to her nose. All Akame could make out was that she had pale white skin and long flowing snow white hair. Truly a unique character. What's going on? Who are you? Why am I here? Akame asked, the woman simply staring at her. Appearing to size her up. After another moment of silence from the woman, she smiled, seemingly happy with what she saw. So you're the one. Your fate is intertwined with his now. What? Akame asked, taken back for a moment. What in the world was going on? The woman in white shook her head with a light laugh. It matters not, young one. Everything that has been set into motion now will all be explained in due time. Just know that you now hold a pivotal spot in this world's history as one of its chosen caregivers. Watch, for this is your future with my sword, she revealed, motioning towards the war zone in front of her. Snapping her finger. Instantly the world itself seemed to come alive before her own eyes. Explosions going off left and right. Body flying in the sky, followed by endless screams all around her. What the hell was this? She asked herself just as a crimson blurred crossed her field of view. Akame tracked it with her keen eyesight only to watch it land gracefully in front of her. The raven-haired assassin's eyes widening as realization struck her that this was in fact a woman. Where are you? It's time to finish this. The woman suddenly barked out into the war zone as Akame took in all her features. Long flowing black hair that was pulled back on her left side and tied off with a white ribbon was the first thing Akame noticed on her, followed by piercing red eyes. She seemed to look like she was in her early 20s. Tall in height and a large bust for sure. She was certainly someone that caught everyone's attention on the battleground, especially with what she wore. The long, almost ceremonial kimono covered her from the neck down. It was cut down straight down the middle in two different colors. One side was black, while the other was white with sakura flowers covering her upper shoulder. But the one thing that stood out most to Akame was her weapon brandished on her side was a flaming neon orange and black katana. The girl's eyes widened. What was this? Who was this? Akame had never seen a woman like this before, except in herself and her mother. There was no way that could be possible, there was no way that. You're right. Another voice echoed from in the distance. Quickly getting closer and catching Akame's attention away from the woman, it is time to finish this. It's time for you to face this world's new goddess. The voice yelled out, a ray of light shooting out from the shadows aimed towards the woman. Without even flinching, the woman swatted the attack to the side with her katana. The ray of light impacted the ground near her, cutting a hole deep into the earth, stunning Akame. But not kimono-wearing woman, who simply began to walk forward, approaching another figure who was walking out of the darkness surrounding the area. Look at what that power has done to you, it has turned you into something horrible. Whatever she promised you, nothing can bring him back. The same can be said for you. The Lee line requires a sacrifice. He's gone, a feminine figure growled, walking out into the open, revealing herself to the extremely confused Akame and woman. The girl, slightly shorter than Akame, walked up. Long light gray hair flowed down her back as she moved. Now this one seemed extremely strange, the assassin. Much like the piercing red eyes of the other woman, this girl had melting orange eyes with strange design surrounding her irises, followed by a unique and large ornament on the left side of her head that complemented her multiple color outfit, which consisted of the colors gray, black, and accents of neon orange and purple. Akame watched in shock as the woman before her bit her crimson lips and gripped her katana, clearly readying for an attack. Even so, he wouldn't want me to falter. None of those I left behind would. This was our only chance. Now get out of my way, I don't want to fight you. That is where it will all end. She almost growled, pointing her sword in the direction behind the short girl. The girl, in turn, snickered in delight. Wrong. This is where you end. This is your legacy. All of your legacies. Once my mistress's plan is completed, you won't even matter. She roared, bright crimson red embers forming around her as she lunged towards the raven-haired woman, sprinting at full speed, pulling her fist back. The woman, in turn, readied her katana in a guard, bright orange energy materializing around her as she utters only a few words, "We'll see." The two quickly clashed, energy spewing all around the area as Akame put her hand up to try and block some of their rival forces. Her vision quickly blurring as a wave of white energy blew her out of existence. Suddenly she felt herself propelled forward at an inhuman speed. Akame tried to open her eyes, but the force of the wind was just too much, so strong. She yelped before suddenly and painfully coming to a stop. The raven-haired girl felt herself slide across the ground before coming to a halt. Oh ow. What's going on? She groaned, slowly lifting her head up and opening her eyes, only to find herself at the feet of the mysterious figure draped in all white once again. Sorry for the sudden shift. I couldn't have you seeing too much. She giggled just as Akame began to stand back up. Cautious about another sudden jerk, she hesitantly waits a moment to fully stand and question the woman. You again? Who are you? Where am I? Why am I see all this? She stammered out. The woman in white giggled once more, walking past Akame as a scene began to form around them. As I said, all in due time, child. For now, watch and listen. For this could be the one thing that saves you both. That differs from the timelines. She revealed just as the scene came to life around the two. Akame found herself looking down at a jagged cliff riddled with smoldering remains of wagons, weapons, horses and people. Her eyes widened as she scanned the top of the cliff, seeing both Imperial soldiers and Revolutionary Army forces amongst them. Could this have been a major battle? Could she be seeing the conclusion of the war? So many questions rattled throughout her head, but then she saw her to be exact. The same raven-haired woman, only this time she wasn't taking a powerful stance of attack. No. This time she laid on her knees on the edge of the cliff, covered in soot, dirt, and bleeding wounds. What the? Akame asked herself, while the woman in white directed her gaze to the other end of the cliff. Watch, child. She ordered. Akame focused in, just as a portal seemed to rip straight through the air and a woman slowly stepped out, dragging something behind her. Akame gasped at her appearance, for it was truly something out of this world. The woman in question had what looked like a high-collared hime kimono, which adorned with gold and purple lines and tomo running down the center and edges of the kimono. She looked very beautiful with shoulder-length white hair and bright red eyes. So you are still alive? The woman asked, walking forward, still dragging the large mass on the ground behind her. Akame looked towards the raven-haired woman who stood up on her own 2 feet. Why yeah. Do you really think I'd simply roll over and die? She asked, wiping away some blood from her bottom lip. The white-haired woman giggled. I suppose not. You are his after all. Something I can't say for the other one. She revealed, throwing the mass in front of her. Both Akame and the raven-haired woman's eyes widened in shock as they watched the body of Leon roll across the ground before settling face up. Her eyes still wide open, tears still noticeably pouring down her cheeks. But even Akame could tell that she was, in fact, dead, having succumbed to some horrible death. The large deep wounds that riddled her body helped reinforce this. Akame's best friend had died. Akame was still riddled with shock that she had almost missed the sudden outburst from the other woman. Leon. What did you do? She screamed out, rushing towards the body of the blonde. Trying to shake her, but it was no use. The life had left her eyes some time ago. It's a shame really. The white-haired woman laughed, beginning to walk forward. She thought she could challenge me alone. Without him. Just like the rest of your comrades. What do you mean? The raven-haired woman asked, looking up at her. Angry quickly flooding her eyes as she balled her hands into fists, beginning to stand up. To challenge the other woman. Look around you. Do you really think I'd bring you here by chance? She asked, spreading her arms out. At the dozens of bodies that were scattered all around them. Both Akame and the woman began to look around. Their eyes widened even further in horror. All around them laid the corpses of their comrades. Their family. Her loved ones. Night Raid. And no. They both stuttered out at the same time, tears streaming down their cheeks. You could have saved them all. The white-haired woman said, laughing, as she walked up to her. Kicking Leon's head before suddenly and violently grabbing the raven-haired woman by the throat and lifting her up. Why didn't you do more? Huh? Instead of just relying on him. She shouted, walking them both over to the edge of the cliff. Akame watched as the raven-haired woman struggled dearly for her life. Clawing at the white-haired woman's arm, this is all your own doing. Your own legacy, Akame. She roared out, lifting her into the air as the younger girl watched in shock at the events unfolding. Naruto isn't here to save you. He's never coming back. You saw that yourself. She growled, staring up at her, while a long blade began to form in her opposite hand. Poised to strike at the older Akame. Now go join him. She uttered out just as she stabbed her blade into her chest. The entire scene fading to white in an instant for Akame. The black-haired assassin's eyes flew open as she realized that she was looking down and the floor was approaching fast. Huh? Akame asked out loud before she thumped to the ground, followed by maniacal laughter. Wake up. A voice shouted out from the door to her room. Akame would have quickly put up her guard, but the owner of the voice was someone she had known for a couple years. She looked over to see Leon hunched over, laughing to her heart's content. Come on, sleepyhead, it's not like you to sleep for this long. Leon said, trying to control herself. Leon? Akame asked, looking surprised. She had thought that she had just witnessed Leon die not even a few minutes ago, but then reality kicked in and she realized that it had to be a dream of some sort. Yeah, who else would it be? Now hurry up and get dressed. We have an assignment tonight and mine made a whole bunch of meat for breakfast. The moment she said that, Akame's eyes lit up like a Christmas tree. Leon laughed some more and walked out of the room. Akame looked around, trying to confirm it was a dream. Once she was sure everything was fine, she began to get up. That's when she realized she was holding something tightly in her hands. She looked down to see that Murasum was tightly in her grip and looked to be pulsating with a strange type of white energy. Rewrite the future. A voice echoed from it, causing Akame to flinch. The voice reminding her of the woman in white from her dream. But then just as it started, the pulsating soon stopped. However, she continued to stare a few more seconds. Akame looked around some more before she dismissed the sight for later and began to get dressed. So it was a dream. But it felt so real. She said, putting on her clothes as she looked at herself in the mirror. But what was that? Who were those people? But most importantly, who is Naruto? She said as she finished getting everything ready. The girl soon exited her room and walked downstairs. She walked into the kitchen to find all of her teammates there. Mine and Shield were in the kitchen preparing meals. While Bullet, Leon, and Lubbock were all sitting at the table eating various foods. Yo, Akame, Lubbock said, looking up and seeing her standing in the doorway. Another assignment tonight. It seems they're coming in like wildfire nowadays. Leon said as she tossed a sheet aside that informed them of their latest target in the capital. More corruption these days. It seems. Bullet said, sipping some coffee. Tell me about it. Yesterday I saw a group of kids being sold off to some rich pervert right on the streets. Lubbock said, leaning back in his chair and staring out the window. In broad daylight? Bullet asked, with a small amount of surprise in his eyes. Of course, he knew how bad the capital was, but nevertheless it still shocked him how people could be so cruel. Yeah. I killed him later during the day and rescued the kids. Lubbock added in. Damn, this place is getting worse and worse by the minute, Mine said, walking onto the room with a large plate of meat. Shield was not far behind her as she was bringing more food in for the others. Akame's eyes were glued onto the plate of meat. When Mine put the food down, she immediately sat down and began to eat it quickly, but began to slow when she recalled her very vivid dream. Yeah, but that's why we're here. Leon said, getting up from her chair. She was about to head to the door when she noticed Akame had barely eaten anything. She was beginning to get worried. Something wrong, Akame? Leon asked, leaning beside her. Causing the rest of Night Raid present in the room to turn towards her with worried faces. Huh? Oh no, it's nothing. Akame said, face full of surprise when she realized that the dream was affecting her this much. Other people were beginning to notice. Really? Because you haven't really touched any of your breakfast. This isn't like you. Leon said, pointing to the mountain of food in front of her. Yeah. You also slept in today. Are you sure you're okay? Bullet asked. Akame knew she couldn't hide it forever, so she swallowed her doubts and decided to tell them. Well. I'm not really sure, but I had this strange dream that's been bothering me. Akame said, face filling with worry. This put everyone on alert because if Akame was worried about this, then it had to be serious. Tell us then, Mine said sitting down next to her. Bullet, Shiel and Lubbock all nodded in agreement. Leon nodded her head as well. Akame took a deep breath and began to explain the very vivid dream to the rest of her team. Time skip 5 minutes later. That's certainly strange, and you said when you woke up you were gripping Murasum tightly. Bullet asked putting on a thinking pose as he thought the dream over. The others were thinking it over as well, although Leon was freaking out. She didn't want to die. Yeah. Do you think it might have something to do with it? Akame asked. It could be. We still don't know everything about your Tigu. It could possibly have a dangerous side effect to it. Maybe very vivid dreams. Bullet said, closing his eyes and crossing his arms. I have an idea. Lubbock shouted out suddenly. Everyone looked over at him raising an eyebrow. What is it, Lubbock? Mine said sighing. The majority of the time he never had good ideas. What if the danger beast that Murasum was made from had the ability to see into the future like in some of the manga I read? Lubbock asked. Mine and Leon just put their hands up to their faces shaking their heads. Leon turned towards Lubbock with an annoyed look. Lubbock, that has to be one of the. She was interrupted by Bullet who raised his hand up to get everyone's attention. He could be right, Bullet said, eyes closed and arms crossed. Eh? Leon and Mine shouted out in unison. There are Tigus out there with the ability to see into the future. It's quite possible that Murasum was made from a danger beast with that type of power. Bullet said. This is all too confusing for me. I don't want to deal with this. Akame, come talk to me when you finally start having interests in boys. Leon said, getting up from her chair and beginning to walk towards the door that leads outside of their base. Where are you going? Lubbock asked. Down to the capital to collect information. What else? Leon asked, looking confused. You mean you're going to trick some rich pervert out of his money and get drunk? Lubbock said with a smirk. Meh. We'll see where the day takes us. Leon said, shrugging. Just remember we have that mission tonight in the high-class district. Shiel reminded her. Yeah. The family of sadist, I remember. I'll be there. Leon said, walking out of the door. Lubbock went to take care of some chores around the base. Mine and Shiel went to collect more food and supplies in a nearby town. That left only Akame and Bullet sitting in the dining room. Bullet was busy sharpening his sword and Akame was in deep thought. She was trying her hardest to remember the dream, but it was slowly fading from her mind. The only thing she could remember clearly was the name Naruto. Just who is he? And how does he play into all of this? Akame muttered to herself. Remembering how the woman who had fought her older self kept mentioning how there was no bringing him back and how it was Akame's fault. It was almost as if Akame and this Naruto character were connected on a much deeper level. But that was impossible, Akame would never let that happen. It would only ever end badly for both of them. But nevertheless, Akame had neglected to tell the rest of Night Raid about the boy. She wanted to keep that to herself for now. You say something, Akame? Bullet asking, looking up from sharpening his sword. Oh. Nothing, just thinking. Akame said as she turned to stare out the window. The name burning into her mind. She needed to find out what was going on. She needed answers. What's your problem, lady? Naruto shouted out as he and Esdith both tumbled down a hillside. An almost love-struck smile plastered across the blue-haired woman's face as they both landed on level ground with a thud. Naruto quickly got his bearings as he slammed Esdith to the ground, pushing all his weight into her. Keeping her down, well? He asked, his forearm now pressed against her throat. The woman coughed underneath his raw strength, taking a few more seconds to collect herself before she began to speak. Well, you see, Naruto, I've never met a man like yourself. So full of strength and a strong moral compass. MHNG. She groaned out. Naruto could feel her legs moving over his back and tightening. She was preparing for a counter. The blonde used his other arm to flip her around onto her belly just as she began to speak again. I will make you mine. The Uzumaki quickly forced her arm behind her, keeping her in a hold and completely immobilizing her. Well, I'm not one for the taking, lady. Especially to a lady with such terrible views as yourself. Naruto growled, applying more pressure to her arm. Esdith smiled, looking back up at Naruto again with the same love-struck smile. Let's just see about that. Han. She roared out, quickly coating Naruto's arm in a layer of thick ice. The blonde's eyebrows visibly rose in surprise as Esdith smirked. Let's see you beat this. But to her amazement and shock, her ice was quickly shattered away as Naruto's fiery chakra cloak burst through it, covering his arm and healing whatever minimal damage Esdith did to his arm. What is this? She thought to herself, watching the flame-like chakra disappear into thin air, as so strong. She mentally quivered before an additional voice brought her out of her trance-like state with this man. General Esdith. A voice shouted out from the top of the hill. Both the woman and the man looked up only to see a vast number of soldiers standing at the top. All were looking down at them, their weapons were all at the ready. TCH typical. My army gets here right as the fun begins. Esdith groaned internally as she felt Naruto apply more force to her arm. Everyone defend the general. One of them suddenly shouted as they all began to run in a full sprint straight towards Naruto. The blonde didn't want to waste any more time here as it was, so thinking on his toes, he quickly rose himself and Esdith up to their feet. Listen, lady, word of advice, maybe more people would like you if you had a better outlook on life. Besides, a person as pretty as you can't be completely bad. He smirked, quickly chopping the back of Esdith's neck. Why you think I'm pretty? Esdith asked, just as blackness consumed her vision and a blush covered her face. Before falling unconscious onto the ground. Shocking her entire army. General. They all screamed in rage a moment later as Naruto quickly realized it was time to leave. He didn't have the time or drive to fight an entire army right. So without giving it another thought, the blonde shunshined himself away from the approaching enemies. All the way back to his clone and Yukari. A few moments later. I'm here. Naruto shouted out. Suddenly appearing out of thin air. Causing his clone, who had been standing guard watch in the secluded clearing, to almost topple over a log in shock and terror. Forcing the original Naruto to question his clone's effectiveness. And after about half a second, his clone shot up hysterically, "Aw, come on boss. Would you do that? I already have enough to deal with as it is." He shouted out. Naruto raised his eyebrow. Putting his guard up and looking around, "What do you mean? Is something wrong with Yukari?" His clone quickly shook his head and walked up to him. "Relax boss, there's no danger. Little Yukari's fine," he announced, pointing up to a nearby tree. The original followed his gaze only to see Yukari sitting on one of the larger branches with yet another clone standing guard beside her. The two seemed to be having a pretty interesting conversation from the looks of it. Did something happen? Why is there another one?" Naruto asked as he lowered his guard. His first clone nodded. "Yeah, we did run into some trouble about a few minutes after we left you." "Explain," Naruto said, crossing his arms. Suddenly he heard a grumble in the back of his mind from Kurama. That could only mean one thing. This was going to be a pain. "Well, you see, as we moved along the trees we ended up running into this crazy girl with a katana. When Yukari and I noticed this, we also saw that she was, in fact, battling with this girl." He revealed, rolling the log from before out of the way to reveal an unconscious girl laying on the grass. The original raised an eyebrow as he took in all her features. She had long flowing blonde hair that reached down to her thighs and pale skin. All in all, she looked to be a pretty ordinary person aside from her outfit. Naruto could only describe as one of those cowgirl outfits you'd see in a movie. Certainly not something fit for regular wear. "And who exactly is this girl?" Naruto asked, kneeling next to the unconscious girl, just as the other clone walked over with Yukari on his shoulders. "We have no idea. But the girl with the sword was about to kill her. So naturally, we stepped in." The newly emerged clone boasted. Yukari seemed to like his antics as she began to giggle. While Naruto's first clone continued to speak. "It was a pretty short battle. She seemed to be able to summon people at will somehow. But they all weren't that strong. We had just finished up with them and got situated in our positions once you showed up, boss," he explained. "Then where is that girl now?" Naruto asked, checking the blonde girl's pulse and breathing. "She ran away," the first said, shrugging his shoulders. "It's better we stayed here than risk her ambushing us or trying to go for Yukari." "So what are we going to do with her, boss?" the second clone asked. Naruto took a moment to think, looked over at the girl and then to Yukari. Knowing that he couldn't just leave someone here in the wilderness, "I guess we'll have to take her with us." He sighed, going over to his second clone and taking Yukari off his shoulders and onto his. "Maybe once she wakes up we can find where she belongs," he added as the second clone walked over and gently picked up the unconscious girl. "Yeah, hopefully, we can find out just where this imperial capital," his first clone said, quickly moving out of the clearing and into the woods. Trying to use his senses to find the nearest source civilization. Naruto watched his second clone follow close behind the first. The girl safely in his arms as they disappeared into the trees. "Looks like this is all we can do for now." Naruto sighed as he looked back at Yukari, who stared at him with her big blue eyes. "Hey, are you okay, Mr. Naruto?" she stuttered out. Quickly realizing he was being too gloomy and serious. Much different than his normal self, he put on a bright smile and rubbed the little girl's head. "Of course. Don't gotta worry about me. I got us both, Yukari. Now, are you all settled?" And she happily nodded, tightening her grip on Naruto's back. Taking this as his cue, Naruto bent his knees and took off into the trees at top speed, then hang on tight. He cheered out, disappearing into the forest. Traveling to what he hoped was the imperial capital. Time skip a few hours later. After a few hours of jumping through the trees, Naruto's group had finally arrived at their first sign of civilization. Sure, it was only a small dirt road, but at least there was still evidence that people had come through not too long ago, as shown by the fresh wagon tracks. Any movement? Naruto asked, trying to remain as quiet as possible, as the small and fragile Yukari had seemed to have fallen asleep on his back. The clone, who had the only free pair of hands, sat a few branches above the rest, scanning carefully. Yeah, it looks like a group of merchants, and one person following behind them at about 100 feet. He said, leaning against the trunk of the tree. Meanwhile, the second clone was sitting calmly next to Naruto, still tightly holding onto the unconscious girl. All in all, their little group was doing okay. But something felt off, the blonde could feel it. Naruto peered over to the road, just as the small wagon rolled down the road. Both men seemed to be laughing and joking. In high spirits, it seemed, but all of a sudden the ground began to shake violently, and everyone was put on alert. An earthquake? The clone beside him asked. Naruto shook his head, gently putting Yukari down on the branch. No, I don't think. Prius. The blonde was immediately interrupted by a large crash on the roadside. He and his clones all darted their heads over to the source of the noise. Just in time to see a weird-looking creature erupt from beneath the road and stare down at the wagon. Earth Dragon. The men in the wagon shouted as they both dived off the wagon, just as the beast smashed it into pieces. Both of them quickly stumbled to their feet and began to run away in the opposite direction. Naruto clenched his teeth, quickly looking up at his clone above. Damn it. We have to help them. You stay here with Yukari. The clone nodded, jumping back down to them. Understood, boss. The original looked over to the clone carrying the girl and began to bark more orders. You put the girl down, and we'll go help them. The other clone nodded and put the girl down next to the now drowsy Yukari. Then they both jumped down from the tree and sprinted out into the road. The Earth Dragon in their sights. Let's end this with one hit. Naruto shouted out as he started to focus chakra into his right hand. Yeah. His clone said, focusing chakra into his own hand. Within milliseconds, large glowing yellow orbs appeared in their hands. The two picked up speed and rushed towards the Earth Dragon. Both pushed off the ground in sync, racing. But Naruto never got the chance to unleash the attack as the Earth Dragon suddenly and violently fell over on the ground. Dead. Both of them landed on the ground with puzzled expressions. What the hell? His clone asked, looking around. Alright. A voice cheered out just as a figure landed on top of the monster's corpse. Naruto quickly sized him up, taking in all his features. The boy seemed to be a few years younger than him. He had green eyes and medium-length brown hair with a noticeable cowlick. The boy wore a tan sweater vest, a pair of black pants and combat boots. In his hands, he carried what seemed to be a simple combat sword. That was an amazing boy. Shouted a voice as the two men who were sent running in fear from the beast had come back, congratulating him. All while Naruto quickly dispelled his clone. Simply standing behind the boy, waiting for a moment to speak. You were actually able to defeat an Earth Dragon single-handedly. One of them said, shaking the boy's hand. Well, obviously for someone like me that was a piece of cake. The boy shouted, clearly boasting about the kill. Causing both the men to look at him with confused expressions. What's your name? The other one asked with a smile. Trying to shake the awkwardness away. The boy smiled once more. I'm Tatsumi. And you better remember the name. I'm gonna make it big in the capital. He shouted out, pointing to himself. The two men's expression immediately changed from relief to worry as he brought up the imperial capital. So you want to become successful in the capital too? The other man asked Tatsumi. Yeah. It's every country boy's dream to make it big there. He said with a bright smile. The two men just looked away with a worried expression. What's up? Tatsumi asked, clearly noticing their worried faces. The first spoke up with audible worry in his voice. The capital's not some fantasy land where you'll find all of your wildest dreams and be served food on a silver platter. There are worse monsters than danger beasts that lurk in those streets and houses. He explained. Are you saying there's something worse than danger beasts out there? Tatsumi shouted out, being a complete airhead to what they were going on about. Yeah, people. Their hearts are filled with darkness and hatred. Makes this thing here look like an angry raccoon. The second one said, looking away, kicking the corpse of the monster. Then it sounds like the imperial capital needs someone like me. A voice said from behind Tatsumi. Who in turn quickly spun around. Coming face to face with Naruto. Huh? Tatsumi asked, raising an eyebrow as the blonde walked up to them. Who are you? One of the men asked. I'm Naruto. Naruto Uzumaki. You're going to the capital too? The blonde asked, staring down at Tatsumi with a smirk. Yeah? Tatsumi asked, backing away awkwardly from the blonde. Naruto placed his hand on the boy's shoulder. Want to travel together? He asked suddenly, causing Tatsumi's face to fill with shock. But little did he know that Naruto had a master plan in all this now. What did he came up with on the fly? He needed someone to carry the cowgirl. Sure, he could use his clone, but that was such a bore. But also there was another reason. A far more important one. The boy reminded him of his younger self. His brash and overconfident demeanor. His cheerful and delightful expression. Something of his that was put on the back burner during the war. The blonde couldn't help but feel that this boy was going to go places and he might help bring some normalcy back into his life. Sure. Tatsumi said, barely giving it much thought. The blonde smirked playfully, great, let's go. He cheered, his plan coming together as he ran back into the woods to get the others. Tatsumi was about to follow, but was quickly stopped by one of the men from the wagon. What is it? Tatsumi asked, looking back. I don't know what it is about that guy, kid, but if you want my advice, keep an eye on him. It seems super suspicious, but not bad intentioned. He said, beginning to fumble in his pocket for something. Also, we want you to have this. He handed the boy a large bag of coins. For what? Tatsumi asked, raising his eyebrows. For saving us. You earned it. The man smiled. The other man behind him nodded in agreement, but be safe out there, kid, we got to get what's left of this stuff over to the next village. He waved as both of them quickly walked around the monster to the wreckage of their wagon. Tatsumi quickly peered into the bag only for his eyes to widen in shock from the amount of coin inside. Whoa. Now with this, I'm sure to find a decent place to stay tonight and then I can send the rest of this back to my village. He smiled, turning around to see Naruto standing with what looked like an exact copy of himself. This caused Tatsumi's eyes to widen in shock. Was he seeing double? Combat figure? Surely not. The copy had an unconscious woman on his back that looked like something he'd see from one of his folktales, and on Naruto's back, there was a small girl staring over at Tatsumi with big blue eyes. Naruto, right? Tatsumi asked, looking over to him, rubbing his neck awkwardly. Yeah? The blonde asked. The little girl on his back put her chin on the top of Naruto's head and stared down at Tatsumi. Who's that? He asked, pointing at the copy. Who in turn grinned back. Oh yeah, that's my clone. Naruto said, pointing over to him. This caused Tatsumi's eyes nearly pop out of his head. Clone? He shouted out. This guy can make copies of himself. Tatsumi thought to himself. It's a long story. I can explain it to you on the way. Naruto said, waving the thought away, but could you carry that girl? He added. What? Why me? Tatsumi shouted out. Because my clone needs a break, Naruto said with a smirk. But both Naruto and his clone knew they could go on for another 20 days without needing to rest. Super suspicious, the merchant's words echoed in his mind. Sure, this didn't look messed up at all. But he also trusted the merchant's other words that it didn't seem like he had bad intentions, so Tatsumi went along with it. Fine. Give her here. He said, bending down. The clone, who was now currently holding the unconscious girl bridal style, placed her on Tatsumi's back gently. Tatsumi had no trouble holding the women. Thanks. You're dismissed now. The Uzumaki said, looking back to his clone. Alright. See ya, boss. The clone said, quickly disappearing in a cloud of smoke. Tatsumi's eyes just widened in shock even more, but then he felt someone's eyes on his back. He quickly turned to see the small girl on Naruto's back staring down at him from the shoulders of the blonde. But once they made eye contact with each other, she quickly hid her face in embarrassment. Naruto, who's that? Tatsumi asked, pointing up to the little girl. Naruto raised an eyebrow as he pointed up to her. This little one. This is Yukari. Naruto said, patting the little girl's head. I'm kind of taking care of her for the time being. Hello. She stuttered out, without looking over at Tatsumi. She's a bit shy, Naruto whispered out, causing her to bury her face, even more, into Naruto's hair. Well, it's very nice to meet you, Tatsumi said with a bright smile that almost rivaled Naruto's. Even though the little girl didn't even look up to see it. Come on, we only have a short walk to the capital, Tatsumi added, turning away from them and moving out. You're the guide, Naruto said, adjusting Yukari's position on his shoulders as he followed Tatsumi down the road. Say, why are you going to the capital? Naruto asked as they walked down the road together. Well, Tatsumi began with a smirk. Chapter 4. The Capital of Sin. Oh, so this is the capital. Tatsumi shouted out as he marveled out. The massive skyline of the imperial city, dwarfing the group as they stepped foot through the very outer gates of the city. He still carried the unconscious girl on his back and slowly picking up uneasy stares from the people walking past him. Naruto walked up behind him with the still sleeping Yukari and stared up at the imperial skyline with awe. There was certainly nothing as grand as this back in his own homeworld. Even the Land of Fire's capital couldn't produce anything like this. It certainly is big. Naruto said, looking around at some of the other buildings. All grand and complex. You could tell a lot of money and manpower was spent building this place up to almost look perfect. But then the blonde really let things set in, he could notice the looks of despair and solemn on everyone's face passing them. He saw homeless children in the streets and beggars on the corners. The sight didn't sit too well with him, reminding him too much of his own past. However, Tatsumi was too busy marveling at the buildings and lively colors to notice all of this. How could he? From what Naruto gathered, Tatsumi didn't have much in the way of people watching skills, but even still, was the kid really that dense? If I'm successful here, I can buy my entire village out of debt. Where should we go first? Tatsumi asked, with a face full of excitement. Yep, as dense as ever, just like himself. But little did the group know that a shadowy figure was observing them quietly. Smirking at their interactions, her sharp canines visible as she slipped back into the alleyway. How about we find a place to stay first? Naruto was interrupted by a dust cloud as Tatsumi sped by him. Come on, the barracks are this way. Tatsumi shouted out with a smile full of glee. Tatsumi, wait. Naruto called out to him. The boy came to a speedy stop, almost comically. What? He asked, looking back confused. Naruto knew that Tatsumi had wanted to join the army so he could save his village. It's all the boy could speak about on their way to this place. The blonde sighed, realizing that he was now the grown adult and he had to deal with someone very much like himself. He felt for Kakashi-sensei in this very moment and vowed to apologize to him if they ever met again for all the years of hardship he had brought on him. So now Naruto had to put this in terms the boy would understand. We should find an inn first to put these two at. Don't you think so? Then you can run off and explore to your heart's content. He said, pointing to Yukari on his back and the girl on Tatsumi's. Well, yeah, I suppose. Tatsumi said, fully thinking the situation through, kicking the rocks along the road. Clearly annoyed with being hindered from his goal. We'll go to the barracks when we're done. Naruto smirked, wanting to put some spirit back into the boy's eyes before turning back and walking in the opposite direction of Tatsumi. Alright, fine. Tatsumi said, quickly catching up to the blonde, following him closely. The two had walked no more than 5 minutes before they had stumbled on a small inn near a small park. The two agreed on it and walked into the building. They were greeted by a rather skinny man who wore what looked like a Bellup uniform. Naruto went up to the man and asked for a room. The man complied and the blonde handed him a large bag of coins that Tatsumi had been given from his village to pay for the beginning of his grand adventure. Thank you. Naruto said with a small nod. Yukari was still sleeping on his back as he turned from the man towards the boy. First door on your left, up those stairs, sir. The man pointed to a set of stairs on the far side of the room. Naruto and Tatsumi went up the stairs and walked down a short hallway before finding their room. Naruto gripped the handle and opened the wooden door. It was a rather small room with a small bathroom to their left and 2 beds in the main area with a window on the far wall. They charge this much to stay in one room? And by the hour? I don't know if we'll have enough to pay for the rest of the night here. If that's the case, Tatsumi said as he set the girl down on the bed closest to him. Naruto lightly tossed the bag of coins back to the boy before gently setting Yukari on the other unoccupied bed. Times seem tough here. Haven't you noticed? Naruto said as he pulled the covers over Yukari, who happily snuggled into the bed. What do you mean? This place looked very lively today, wasn't it? Tatsumi asked, looking confused. He thought Naruto had a screw loose. The imperial capital was like heaven. Lots of safe and secure buildings, shops as far as the eye could see, guards everywhere. He had never seen a safer place, his village could never even hold a candle up to this place. The Uzumaki shook his head, sitting on the edge of Yukari's bed. No, not really. No one was smiling, everyone had a solemn expression. Lots of beggars and orphans. He explained, rubbing the little girl's head before getting up and walking over to the window. Staring down at the street, his brow furrowed. People didn't look like they were happy here. From what he sensed, it felt like everyone here was imprisoned. He wanted to do something about it. It reminded him of his village when he was very young, when tragedy after tragedy had racked his people with grief. It was something he didn't like to see. Slowly shaking away this feeling, he slowly looked back towards the young adventurer. Anyway, didn't you want to go to the barracks? Sure do. Tatsumi said with a wide grin as he went to the door. Clearly ready to get going, not even noticing the Uzumaki's body language. I'll stay here and watch over these two. Naruto said, pointing over to the 2 sleeping members of their party. Alright then. I'll be back in a bit. Tatsumi said, walking out of the door, a wide grin plastered on his face. See ya. Naruto said as he heard the door close. Shuddering as soon as the boy was gone. Yeah, he was a carbon copy of his young self, but that was a good thing. It reminded him of how he really was and how he shouldn't let his current predicament mess with his header personality too much. So the blonde turned towards the window and went to sit cross-legged on the ground as he heard a poofing noise in front of him and saw Kurama sitting there with an amused expression. "What's up, Kurama?" Naruto asked, staring down at the fox. "Ah, nothing, kid. Just got bored sitting around in your seal," Kurama said, rolling around on his stomach. "Oh, alright then," Naruto said, shrugging as he took out one of his kunai and began to sharpen it on one of his sharpening tools from his seemingly bottomless tool and weapons pouch. "So what do you think we should do?" Kurama asked as he finally stopped rolling around. "What do you mean?" Naruto asked, perking up. "With our whole situation, we know that this is Kagaya's homeworld, but I don't sense anything amazingly different other than the flow of chakra here." "What do you mean?" "I was barely sensing any sort of flow here whatsoever," Naruto asked, putting down his kunai. "Don't you ever use that thing between your ears, other than fighting?" "Never mind that, the chakra it's more grounded here, seemingly flowing in the very earth rather than through the bodies of humans or animals. It seems like it's almost trapped. I can detect bits of it in the air, but everything seems to be under the earth." "I see, maybe we're dealing with a different type of chakra. Maybe a super kind or a really old kind." "Well, it's good to see your personality hasn't changed too much because of the time skip. But let's just focus on our current situation until we investigate more about Kagaya. What about that group that Esdith men said Yukari's grandfather was supporting? They seem to be a great cause of unrest in this world. Maybe they or their allies have more detailed historical records on this world." "You know, for a being of pure chakra designed to fight, you are pretty smart," Naruto chuckled as the small fox simply grumbled before the blonde seemingly had an aha moment. "Night raid, wasn't it?" he blurted out suddenly as he tried to remember back when he fought against Esdith men. "Yeah. We should try and find them," Kurama said, getting up from the ground and hopping atop the window sill. "We could do that. But I need to keep Yukari safe," the blonde said, looking back over at the sleeping girl. Just because he was sent by the father of all shinobi on an important mission didn't mean he could forget his promise to her grandfather. He needed to keep her safe no matter what in this strange new world. "Yeah, agreed. We need to do some more research on them before we could possibly think about approaching them. Who knows what they're capable of. This empire doesn't seem all too safe, but they might be much worse," Kurama said with a smirk before his ears seemed to perk up and the bed furthest from them suddenly rustled aloud. The fox grinned, showing his teeth seemingly excited. The Uzumaki of course already knew the very moment she had awakened, even as the cold barrel of the gun pointed against the back of his head, he let out a rather audible sigh. "You can put the gun down. I won't hurt you," he said, turning his head to see the cowgirl had now woken and seemed very confused. But even still she had the courage to hold her pistols up in defense. "You have 10 seconds to tell me where I am and who the hell you are," she shouted out as she moved her guns closer to him. Naruto could tell she was trying not to panic. Clearly very afraid, as most likely the last thing she would have remembered was almost being cut down by a rather powerful foe. Meanwhile Kurama was watching the entire thing unfold and was trying not to die of laughter. "You just love to surround yourself with the most exciting females, don't you, boy? Heh, it seems you got this covered. I'll go do some research on this night raid," the small fox said before jumping out of the window onto the streets below. "Useless fox," Naruto muttered under his breath, realizing he needed to defuse the situation before it got any more out of hand, or worse, the now rustling little girl was put in danger. So the blonde put a smile on his face and held both his hands high in the air. "I'm Naruto, and I saved your life." He gestured, beginning to slowly stand up. "Saved my life? What the hell are you talking about?" the girl shouted out in frustration. "You were being attacked by a strange girl, so my clones came to save you. If my memory serves me right, you would have died if we hadn't intervened," Naruto said, standing up fully, her guns still trained on his heart and head. Meanwhile the girl seemed to be taken back for a moment as the memories came flooding back to her mind, how she had almost met her end by that insane sword that the crazed girl held. She remembered that she failed to assassinate her target and in turn almost lost her life. If it wasn't for the blonde here. But this also brought her great shame once she fully realized her situation. "Fine. Maybe I believe you. But where the hell am I at?" she barked out, slowly lowering her 2 pistols. Seemingly calming down just a bit. But still her rather bad attitude began to tick the blonde off slightly. Why couldn't this girl just be a little bit thankful for once? Reminded him of his old crush Sakura a bit. "Could you please be quiet? You'll wake Yukari," Naruto said, pointing back to the girl, who was now tossing and turning in the sheets. "I don't care. Now tell me," the girl said, although her voice was now more of a loud whisper. The blonde sighed, rubbing the back of his head. "You're in the imperial capital. We brought you here because it seems to be the best course of action," Naruto said, crossing his arms. The girl's eyes widened suddenly when the Uzumaki mentioned the capital. She shouldn't be here, this wasn't good at all. Why am I here in the capital of all places? The girl asked, with a mix of frustration and slight fear in her voice this time. As I told you, it was our best course of action. I don't know this world, it was the only place I could find leads. Naruto said, shrugging his shoulders. Or so I thought. He said to himself. The girl, clearly not happy with this information, raised her guns in anger. Her fingers shakily on the triggers. This is bull. Does anyone know who I am? Naruto raised an eyebrow at her outburst. No. Not even me. So how about you put the guns down and we'll talk? He advised, fed up with her attitude as he went to sit down on the floor in front of her. The blonde, seemingly seeing no threat from the shinobi, lowered her pistols once more. Fine. She said, putting her weapons away and sitting directly in front of Naruto. Soon he began to explain to her everything that had happened while she was out cold. 5 minutes later. Once the blonde had finished, she seemed to sit in silence for a moment before looking up in silence, taking her cowgirl hat off. I guess I understand now, Blondie. The girl said, leaning against the bed. She still couldn't believe that she almost died, all because of that crazy girl. That was sloppy. She had years of training, she was better than this. You never did tell me your name. Naruto said, with an annoyed look. The girl smirked, gently putting her hat back on before stretching her arm out towards him. It's Doya. The Uzumaki smiled, taking her hand and shaking it. Happy that this whole ordeal could be put behind them. Relaxing his demeanor. Nice to meet you. Wait, oh hey. Can I ask you something? Naruto asked, suddenly remembering how they had stumbled upon her in the first place. The memories he received from his clone showed him protecting Doya in his arms as the other girl tried to take a swig at him with her sword, effortlessly blocking the move with one arm. Said attacker rather quickly backed off and retreated into the woods. Yeah, sure, go ahead. Doya said, crossing her arms. What were you fighting that girl for? He asked, with curiosity filling his eyes. She was my target. Doya simply stated, staring him dead in the eye. Target? The blonde asked, scratching his head. She didn't look like an assassin to him. Yeah. I'm an assassin for the northern tribe. I was ordered to go kill Kurum the puppet master for the benefit of our tribe and for the rest of the world. But now that I failed, I can never return to them. She revealed, looking out the window. Eh? Why not? Naruto asked, unrest filling his eyes. Because of tradition. If we fail to kill our target, then we'll die by our target. You shouldn't have saved me. Doya said, looking back at him with a bit of frustration in her eyes. That's stupid. Naruto blurted out, crossing his arms. He still sat on the floor next to Yukari's bed. Surprisingly, the girl had remained asleep the entire time. She must have been a really heavy sleeper. I know. It's a terrible tradition. I've lost too many good friends to that stupid thing. Doya said, clearly frustrated now. What happens if they come back alive without being killed? Without killing their target? He asked, standing up. Then they would be killed by someone truly close to them in the tribe. Doya explained. That's insane. What are you going to do now then? Naruto shouted out. What was it with this stupid world and all this senseless killing? Granted, back in his world there was killing, but none so openly done like this. At least not to his knowledge. I really don't know. I'll repay you for this though. Doya said, staring up at him. Naruto stood a whole head higher than the girl. Which in all honesty did make her a bit annoyed. Repay me? Naruto asked, confused. Yeah, for saving me? What do you want? Food, money, clothes? Doya asked, putting her hands on her hips. You don't have to repay me. Naruto said with a smile. Shock filled the girl's face. Why not? Everyone wants something in this world. You're no different. The blonde chuckled, moving towards the window, looking out towards the bustling streets. There's no reason to. I was just doing what was right. But if you want to feel fulfilled and not that owe me a life debt or anything, you could stick around with me, Yukari and Tatsumi. He said with a smile. Doya for the first time in her life was surprised. She had never met a person who would do such a selfless act like that. Oh yeah, and why should I? She asked, recovering from the small shock of Naruto's seemingly unending kindness. Well, honestly, I really don't know. It's just a suggestion. Tatsumi wants to make it big here to support his village and I just want to make sure Yukari's safe. Along with some other things as well. Naruto said, crossing his arms and looking back at the sleeping girl who had a small smile across her face. Why do you want to protect her so badly? Are you some kind of pervert or something, Blondie? Doya said with a smirk. The Uzumaki looked back at her with a horrified expression. He stammered out, he may have been trained by a pervert, but he was no pervert. He thought to himself. Doya chuckled and patted the Jinchuriki on his back. Relax, I'm just kidding, but I would like to know why. She asked, sitting down on the edge of Yukari's bed. Naruto didn't know if he should tell her, but if he wanted her to trust him he had to. I made a promise to her and her grandpa that I'd protect her no matter what. He revealed what happened to her grandpa. Doya asked, although she was pretty sure that she knew the answer already. He was killed by a group of elite Imperial soldiers because he was a sympathizer for this group called Night Raid. Naruto said. Her eyes quickly perked up at the mention of the seemingly infamous group. Oh, Night Raid. I've heard of them. I was actually thinking about joining the group. She revealed with a smirk. Yeah. The idea's been bouncing around in my head about reaching out to them. Perhaps I could find some leads there, but I have to worry about Yukari. Naruto said in a worried tone. He didn't want to put her in any more danger than she already had been in. But something told him that in this world it wouldn't be possible. You'd be making a better world for her. I'm sure you've noticed the state of this place. Doya said, looking towards the window at the gray skyline of the city. Yeah, I have. What's the problem with this place? Where I come from, this place would have been put in check years ago. Naruto asked. It's something that's been bothering him since he got here. Too much violence, blood, and death. For what? Money. Greed. Power. Well, Doya began, just as the door to their room was sent flying open. Startling everyone besides the absolutely heavy sleeper Yukari. Naruto. Tatsumi panted out as he ran into the room. The blonde in question was immediately put on alert, reaching for a kunai. Doya doing the same, unholstering one of her pistols. Pointing it right at the young man. Tatsumi, what's wrong? Naruto shouted, bringing his kunai to the ready. I lost all my money. Tatsumi shouted out as he began to whine. Naruto blinked for a moment as a poker face slowly took over his expression before realization hit him like a truck and his Uzumaki side was unleashed in a sudden burst of anger. You did what? He shouted out that instantly woke Yukari up from her sleep. The shinobi was fuming not so much because of the fact that Tatsumi lost all of his money. He was more so angry that they knew they couldn't pay to stay the night at this ridiculously overpriced inn. I swear it's not my fault. Tatsumi began. Oh, Naruto couldn't wait to hear this. Doya was laughing slightly at the blonde's antics. Thinking that traveling with these two may not be so bad. Time skipped 2 hours later. The group now found themselves walking across a small concrete bridge over a river. The sky had now turned to night and they had nowhere to stay. Tatsumi had lost all his money he received from killing the danger beasts to a woman that had promised to get him a high-ranking position in the military. But instead the women ran off with all their money. Now Naruto didn't have any money to pay for the night, so they were now forced to sleep out on the streets. Kurama had found them a little while ago and smacked Tatsumi across the face, calling him an idiot. At first Tatsumi freaked out because of the talking fox, but when Naruto very loudly explained it to him, he settled the boy down. Oh well, isn't this just great? Tatsumi shouted out as he kicked a rock alongside the bridge. It's your own goddamn fault. Doya shouted out to him. She had laughed her ass off after Tatsumi told them the story of him losing the money. So she thought this was the perfect moment to pick on him. Why are you even still here? Tatsumi shouted out, pointing back to the cocky cowgirl. I'm simply repaying a debt back to Naruto, and besides you guys will probably need the best gunslinger in all of the North's help on your journeys. She said with a smirk. Oh, don't give me that crap. I don't want to hear it from you. You just woke up a few hours ago. I had to carry you around all day. Do you know how much you weigh? Tatsumi shouted back. What Tatsumi didn't know is that he had just jumped into a pit filled with vipers. Why you? Doya shouted out as she began to chase him around the bridge. Luckily for Tatsumi, he was faster than her. Naruto simply stood leaned against the side of the bridge watching the two go at it. Yukari was at his side holding his hand. She had a bright smile on her face, one that wasn't meant for this place. A moment later Naruto saw a fairly nice looking carriage pass by him. It stopped a second later and a young girl who had short chest-length blonde hair with a fluffy blue hair accessory stepped out of it. She had an expensive looking blue and white dress on. She approached Naruto with a smile. Excuse me?" she asked, approaching the blonde in a very formal manner. Kurama had instantly disappeared back into Naruto's seal to make sure no one saw him. Yeah. Can I help you?" the blonde asked, raising an eyebrow. Yes. Do you and your friends have anywhere to stay tonight?" she asked looking over to Tatsumi and Doya. Doya currently had her pistol in the boy's face as he loudly begged for forgiveness. Naruto shook his head, sighing. Sadly, no. Her smile widened at this. "Oh, would you like to stay at my house then?" the girl simply stated. Tatsumi and Doya quickly took notice of the girl and walked over. We don't have much money," Tatsumi said, approaching her. "You wouldn't be out here if you did," she said with a smile, turning to him. Tatsumi had to admit she was fairly cute. Doya on the other hand got an uneasy feeling from her. "Give it a break. Lady Arya can't leave helpless people like you alone," a man said as he stepped out of the carriage followed by another. Naruto could tell that these were her bodyguards. She won't give up until she gets what she wants. The other bodyguard said, shrugging his shoulders. So what do you say? The girl known as Arya asked Naruto. The blonde thought it over for a second. If it was just Tatsumi and Doya with him they could have easily slept outside, but he had Yukari to worry about. Alright then. Naruto said, nodding his head. Great. Arya said with a bigger smile than before, and before they knew it, they were all pouring into the girl's carriage. Off to wherever this girl called home. After a short time they found themselves in front of a very large mansion on the upper landings of the imperial capital. But the minute Naruto stepped out of the carriage he knew something was off. The smell and the look of this place didn't seem right. He needed to make sure to keep Yukari close at all times here. They all walked inside and were ushered into a room with two adults. Naruto guessed that these were her parents. This place is gigantic. Tatsumi shouted out, much to Doya's annoyance. She was about to yell at him when one of the two approached the group. An older-looking gentleman, most likely Arya's father. Oh my Arya, brought some more people home again. How wonderful. The man said with a smile. He held out his hand to Naruto and in return the Uzumaki shook it. What a habit she's picked up. It's a little late, but I think I could make it work. The second adult said from the chair by the fireplace. The old man moved them into the room where they began to discuss why they came to be here. They were all now sitting in chairs surrounding the fireplace. Arya's family was on the left while Naruto's group was on the right. Yukari was sitting on Naruto's lap, humming a song. Tatsumi explained how he wanted to join the military and become a great general. Doya said he was only here because of Naruto and Yukari was too shy to talk. So Naruto, what do you wish to do? Arya's father asked the blonde. Nothing much really. Naruto said, putting his hand behind his head and stared up at the ceiling. He needed to keep Yukari safe and find out just what was going on with Kagaya's homeworld. But he couldn't say these things aloud. No one would understand his motives and he may be found out. Oh. I see, young man, but you know if there's anything you need you can always come to me. The old man said with a smile. A smile that made Naruto a bit uneasy. Also stay wary tonight. The woman said suddenly. Concern filling her face. Why's that? Tatsumi asked with curiosity. There's a group called Night Raid lurking about in the capital lately. They've been targeting rich citizens for their money and executed their entire families. The old man said, looking extremely worried. Tatsumi's eyes widened. What? Really? Tatsumi asked with shock in his voice. He couldn't believe a group would do that. It made him sick to his stomach just thinking about it. Naruto and Doya simply looked at each other, figuratively rolling their eyes. Yes. Our neighbors were attacked and killed recently. These people want nothing more than our heads. So be on guard tonight. The old man warned the group. You got it. Tatsumi said with a confident smirk. He could handle a few assassins, no problem. Nothing could stop him, not an earth dragon, nothing. Naruto sighed, patting Tatsumi on the shoulder before looking back to the old man, of course. But also I would like to thank you for all your help. I don't know what we would have done if your daughter hadn't come along. Naruto said as he shifted in his chair with a grateful smile. We're all helping each other. You do something nice for someone too. Arya's mother said with another smile that made both him and Doya uncomfortable. Will do. Tatsumi said, giving both of her parents a thumbs up. Naruto saw so much of himself in Tatsumi it wasn't even funny anymore. Well, it's about time we head to bed. Arya can show you to your rooms. The man said, getting up from his seat, followed by his wife. They soon exited the room and left Naruto's group with Arya. Follow me please. Arya said, getting up from her seat. The group followed the girl through her house until they reached a long hallway with multiple doors. Alright, this one's for the girls and that one's for the boys. Have a pleasant night and please be safe. We have a lot to do tomorrow. Arya said, walking back down the hallway and towards a different part of the house. Naruto in the meantime knelt down and was eye level with Yukari now. Are you going to be okay? He asked. Naruto didn't want to leave her alone, especially not here. But he was a guest and Pervy Sage always taught him to follow the owner's rules when he was a guest somewhere. Besides he could jump to her aid in a second, but even he needed rest. He had been going strong for the past few days. He needed a small recharge. I think so. Yukari said, nodding. Alright, if anything's wrong, get Doya. I trust she'll help you. Naruto said, getting up and giving the blonde assassin a nod. You have my word, Naruto. Doya said with a determined expression. Good. I'm going to hold you to that. Be safe and stay on guard, anything could happen. Naruto said, walking away from their door. Doya nodded to Naruto. These two clearly powerful adults made Yukari feel a bit safer and reassured about their situation and her own uneasy feelings. Good night. Yukari said as Naruto closed the door to his room. He smiled at her just before his face disappeared behind the closed door. Throwing himself on the luxurious bed, Naruto looked over to Tatsumi who had begun to take his boots off. Come on, let's try and get some sleep. Naruto told Tatsumi. The brown-haired warrior nodded in agreement. Little did they know their whole lives were about to change for better or worse, only time would tell. Chapter 5. Crimson Red meets Ocean Blue. Esdith's grand military camp was ever bustling, battalions of soldiers marching out into the countryside. Auxiliary officers barked out orders as they carted off the dead and dying to mass graves. Logistic personnel stood over slaves as they cleaned the soldiers' rifles and various pieces of their armor. And at the center of all this stood the Grand Imperial General's tent, the entrance flanked by two absolutely massive guards. Not that the general needed it. Inside, one of her most trusted officers stood at attention. The leader of the three beasts, Liver. He nervously looked down at his left arm, which was currently wrapped in a cast. A gift he had received from his very brief battle with the strange man, who had seemed to wipe out himself and his two subordinates within a matter of seconds. Lady Esdith? He asked, clearing his throat, his eyes darting up to the Imperial General. Who in the meantime was looking over various reports. The travel bag slung over her shoulder. She lazily looked up, acknowledging the man. Giving him permission to talk. Lady Esdith, are you sure this is a wise decision? The Prime Minister's orders were very clear. He informed her. Esdith was genuinely surprised. It wasn't like Liver to question her decisions. She placed the reports back on her desk before approaching the man. Placing a hand on his shoulder, it'll be alright, Liver. I trust the Northern Front to you three. But I must make my way back to the capital, there's something I need to find there. Seemingly not convinced by her answer, Liver looked her dead in the eye. Is it that blonde? If so, then we are. He was silenced as a powerful knee came up into his broken arm, shattering the cast and re-breaking it in a split second. Liver barely had any time to react before the Ice Queen slammed his head down onto the floor. Her boot now placed firmly on the side of his skull. Are you questioning my decision, Liver? She asked, slowly leaning down to him with an incredibly powerful killing aura. Even the seasoned fighter showed fear in his eyes as the demonic crest on her chest began to glow. An ice blade forming over her arm. No. And no. I was only Og. He stammered out as Esdith grinned, the pressure on his skull increasing, his broken arm now the least of his worries. Happy with the end result, Esdith quickly lifted her boot of the man, the ice blade quickly melting down into water as she stepped back. Crossing her arms, good, I was worried there for a moment. I didn't want to have to find another replacement for you. You are my prized second in command after all. She smiled, the killing intent still very much there. Liver grunted in pain as he remained on the floor, not wanting to anger the woman anymore than he already had. Oh, of course, General. We will do anything you command. I will not fail you in this task. The North shall be yours. Good, now see to it you crush the northern armies. Make an example out of their prince, and once you're done make your way back to the capital as quickly as possible. I'll have use for you three back there once I've found what I'm looking for. Esdith instructed, leaning against her desk and grabbing another report. Paying the wounded man no mind. Liver was seething with pain and shame as he slowly began to stand back on his own 2 feet. Holding his arm tightening. He stood back at attention to his commanding officer. I shall take my leave and inform the others. The older man bowed before stepping back out of Esdith's camp and back into the bustling camp. Esdith simply rolled her eyes at the old man. He may have been an excellent general and a masterful fighter, but he really was odd. No matter what, she had more important things to do. So soon enough she was back to looking over report after report, mindlessly flipping through the papers until she finally reached one of the most important to her. Finally, here we are, Esdith giggled, reading over the report in fine detail about her encounter with the blonde man, Naruto Uzumaki. Her eyes widened as a small smile appeared across her face, the Ice Queen's finger tracing across his name until she gently flipped the page. Her smile only got larger as there was a decently well-drawn image of the man on the last page of said report. When she had returned from her small skirmish with the blonde, she had commanded the report's officers to immediately write up a report and draw up a sketch of Naruto based off of her accounts. She was pleased with their hard work. Holding the drawing up to her face, she quickly ripped the paper out of the report. The only one of its kind, she didn't want anyone else to have it or his image to be widely known. No, this man was all hers and she wouldn't let anyone else get between them. Alerted to the sound of someone coming through the tent flaps, the Grand General swiftly pocketed the drawing. Her eyes darting to the small slave woman approaching her with a bow before dropping to a knee. General Esdith. She began. Yes, what is it? The woman responded, giving the slave permission to speak. The woman shakily looked up at the general. Your mount is prepared, when will we expect you to be leaving? The blue-haired beauty smirked at the news before walking past the slave and towards the exit of her tent. Immediately she spoke, throwing the flaps open into the sunlight of the north. Her entire personal guard had gathered around to see her off. All of them were cheering and smiling at their great general. Hoping for her great glory on the journey back. Good luck, General Esdith. Bring yourself glory in the imperial capital. Tell the emperor that the north shall soon be his. They all rallied around her as she boarded her dragon mount with a small wave before taking off going at a high rate of speed. Soon leaving her base in the distance smiling. Getting ever closer to finding the man that stole her heart, now, too, find Naruto and make him mine. She giggled once more, taking out the sketch and holding it up to her chest. Things were about to get interesting. Hey kid. Kid. Wake up. Kurama suddenly roared in the blonde's ears. Naruto immediately shot up in the bed, his eyes going wide before reality suddenly settled into his mind once more. Relaxing for a moment, he rubbed the sleep out of his eyes and stretched his arms up high. Huh? Oh Kurama, what's going on? He asked lazily, looking around the nicely furnished room. The Uzumaki could mentally hear the great fox groan before continuing the current conversation. You've been sleeping for 12 hours, child. It's time to wake up. He reveled. Naruto instantly jumped out of bed and clumsily put his shoes on. Remember where they were and his current situation. Yeah. Why did no one wake me up? Wait, where's Tatsumi? Where's Yukari and Boya? He stammered out, looking around the room almost fading into a panic. Kurama poofed in front of Naruto, his tails wrapping around his legs causing him to trip over himself. Relax kid, Tatsumi ran off with that stuck-up little blonde girl a little while ago, and as for the other two, I assume they're still in their rooms. I haven't heard anything coming from there all morning. The fox chuckled as he plopped down in front of the blonde. Naruto quickly picked himself up before quietly grumbling at the fox before realization quickly settled in. Can't you just sense them? Kurama shook his head, sighing, no I can't. Why do you think I've been going out and searching everywhere? I can't even sense emotions right now. It feels very hazy, like something is actively blocking it in this city. Naruto leaned back on his hands as he looked up towards the chandelier. I didn't even know that was possible. The Nine Tails grumbled once more before making his way to the nearest windowsill. Neither did I kid. The Uzumaki did the same, leaning his hands against the wood looking down at the fox. I should probably go check on Yukari and Oya in that case. What will you do? I'll go investigate the city some more, try and see what's blocking everything around the area. He announced, gently lifting the window open as he prepared to jump out, venturing back into the streets of the vast imperial capital. Good luck then Kurama, just be careful. The fox chuckled, I'm a mystical chakra fox, I think I'll be okay. And with that part of him left Naruto and into the bright lunchtime streets of the capital. Leaving the Uzumaki alone with his thoughts. He exhaled once again thinking about everything that had transpired since he got here. The battle with Sasuke, Yukari's grandfather, Esdith Doya and what seemed to already be a close friend Tatsumi. He had gone through so much already and yet he still had no idea what he was doing. He was literally making up things as he went along. But hey, isn't that what he was best at? However, he didn't have enough time to think too deeply on this. He had people he needed to take care of. Naruto gently shut the window before moving back over to the bed, where he quickly began to slide on his worn sandals and throwing on his tattered jacket. Making his way to the door, he made his way outside and into the hallway. His footsteps echoed across the marble floor as he lightly knocked on the girl's door. Yukari. Doya. He asked, no response. Again he knocked louder this time and waited once again, no response. His instincts quickly getting the better of him, he barged himself into their room. His eyes went wide as their bed laid empty. Reaching for his kunai, he spun around just as the mother of the estate turned the corner. She was holding the hand of a rather excited Yukari, who instantly sprang up as she saw Naruto. Sighing in relief, the blonde quickly pushed the kunai back into his pouch, making sure the woman didn't see it. Meanwhile, Arya's mother gasped in surprise. Oh my, finally awake I see. She asked, Yukari letting go of her hand and running to hug Naruto. The Uzumaki, still a bit on edge, held Yukari close. Oh yeah, how'd you end up with her lady? The mother put her hands on her hips, almost pouting. The woman with her insisted on running after that young man and my daughter. I protested but she ran off. This little one has been with me most of the morning. She smiled, gesturing to little Yukari. Who quickly tugged at Naruto's jacket with a smile. She showed me all her pretty pictures and fed me some yummy food. Naruto, clearly thinking his overactive imagination was getting the better of him, mentally sighed, deciding to give her the benefit of the doubt. Dropping to one knee, he gently rustled Yukari's hair, giving her a small smile. Well, as long as you're safe then. Yukari happily hugged Naruto, while Arya's mother watched the two's interaction, quickly thinking up something for the trio to do. Since they were the only three home and the mansion would be rather boring for a few hours, say if you two aren't doing anything today, would you mind running some errands with me today? My son is one of the officers at the local garrison up the street. I was going to bring him some of my homemade sweet bread. she suggested to the two. Naruto stood back up, instantly disliking the idea. He didn't like being separated from his group. He'd rather wait for them to return, but at the same time it was a good idea to get out and observe the capital a bit more. But still it didn't seem good at. His train of thought was interrupted as Yukari once again began to tug at his jacket. "Can we please, Naruto? I promise I'll be on my best behavior," she pleaded, looking up at him with her big blue eyes. The blonde tried to resist for a moment, trying to look away from those big blue eyes, but he felt his resolve slipping, and soon he caved. "Ah, I don't see why not." He smiled, wanting to make the little girl as happy as she could be in the moment. Happy that they agreed to come, the mother quickly instructed the blonde to get the two ready and meet her outside as soon as they were ready. It took them both a few minutes to get ready, but soon enough they met Arya's mother at the grand front doors. Yukari happily took Naruto's hand as they all began to walk the streets of the upper-class ring of the imperial capital. The Uzumaki peered all around at the people, looking for anything that seemed out of place. But he could sense nothing, just like Kurama said, something definitely seemed out of place here. However, soon enough they had found themselves standing in front of a rather unassuming building between two absolutely massive mansions. "See? Already here, that was fast, wasn't it?" Arya's mother smiled as she walked up to the wooden door. The Uzumaki raised an eyebrow. "This is an imperial garrison?" he asked, not very impressed by its size or state. Wasn't this supposed to be an important building? It housed the guards of the capital, and yet it looked like some run-down shack that the pervy sage would have had them sleep in while they were traveling. She nodded. You see, there's not a lot of crime up here in the upper ring. Being so close to the imperial palace and all. There's almost no need for personal guards, lest they have to deal with the royal guard or the generals personally," she explained, pushing the door open and walking inside. "I see," Naruto replied, taking Yukari in after the mother. Arya's mother walked up to the front desk, where a rather young-looking soldier sat, manning the desk. "Is Stone here? Can you get him for me?" she asked, causing the man to perk up with what seemed like an annoyed snort, but once his eyes laid on her, he sprang up immediately and gave her a bow before quickly walking out of the room, seemingly getting the crap scared out of him just by the mere sight of her. After a few more seconds, a lone figure stepped out from the other room, a rather young, handsome-looking, bushy blonde-haired man. He seemed to even rival Naruto in height and began walking over to the trio. He had gentle-looking eyes that were all too overlooked by the prominent scar going over his left one. This man had certainly seen battles of sorts, mother. He blurted out, giving the woman a rather formal hug. "I didn't expect to ever see you come visit me here. Last I heard, father forbade any contact with each other." His mother giggled. "Oh well, you know me, dear, I just can't stay away from my favorite son." The man released her from the hug before a rather sour expression filled his face. "Mother, I'm your only son." She seemed to look away as her eyes landed on the basket of cookies. Remembering why she came here now. "Anyway, I brought you some homemade sweetbread. I thought with the recent news of your deployment soon you'd like some memories of home." She smiled, handing him the basket of bread. The mere mention of home seemed to cause the man to freeze up for a moment. After another second he took the basket hesitantly before his eyes landed on the two others behind her. "Who's with you, mother?" She perked up once more, gesturing to the two behind her. "Oh, these two. Allow me to introduce you to Naruto Uzumaki and his little friend Yukari." The imperial officer walked up to Shinobi and seemed to size him up for a moment. While Naruto did the same to him. After a few 10 seconds the man stuck his hand out towards the Uzumaki. "It's a pleasure, my name's Stone. Second Lieutenant of the 5th Defensive Garrison." "Yeah, you as well." Naruto awkwardly took his hand as Yukari hid behind his legs. A worried thought seemed to cross Stone's mind as he looked back towards his mother, a hand landing on the handle of his sword. "How'd you come into my mother's care? If I may ask, they're not usually so welcoming to strangers." "Now Stone dear." His mother protested. Seeing that Stone wasn't directing his actions towards them but his mother, Naruto thought there may be some bad blood against the two, so he quickly tried to defuse the situation. "One of my friends ended up losing all our money trying to get into the military. He was unsurprisingly scammed and our inn kicked us out and then Arya found us." Stone stared back at her for a moment before taking his hand away from the hilt of his sword. "I see." Before they could even continue the conversation though, a rather small-looking female soldier walked out of the back with a paper in hand. "Lieutenant Stone. The colonel is asking for an update on those reports," she announced, seemingly in an urgent manner. Stone sighed, turning to the soldier. "Thank you, Lily." He quickly gestured her away before looking back at the brief visitors. "Well, it was a pleasure meeting you both. Stop by here on your way back. I'd love to talk more with the both of you," he recommended, looking right at Naruto as his words echoed out, who saw this more as an order than a suggestion. Once he thought the blonde got the message, he nodded towards the other member of the trio. "Mother." And with that he walked towards the back, Lily following him close behind. "Be safe, Stone." His mother sighed, holding her chest close. Seemingly out in a bad mood by the interaction. But she seemed to shake it off, grasping the door handle and making their way back out onto the street. As they stepped back outside, Yukari smiled at her, striking up a conversation. "Your son looks really strong." Arya's mother giggled slightly, rubbing the girl's hair. "That's because he is dear, one of the toughest soldiers I've ever met in my life." She reassured Yukari before looking up to Naruto. "Now come on, we need to go to the shops, otherwise they'll be closed." Naruto nodded and slightly took Yukari's hand. The interaction with her son certainly set off red flags in his mind, but he needed to observe the situation further and most of all meet back up with Tatsumi and Doya. After all, he just needed to help this woman run a couple of errands. How bad could it really be? 7 hours later. Naruto groaned, the bags under his eyes heavier than the bags he currently carried. Yukari now on his shoulders as Arya's mother walked happily in front of her. Her eyes peered out to the now setting sun as they made their way back to the home. Just how much tools and food does she need? The blonde thought to himself as he comically groaned out, his knees buckling under the weight. "You okay, Naruto?" Yukari asked, leaning down so she could look him in the eye, even if she was upside down to him. A bead of sweat ran down his forehead. She had gone to at least 30 different shops and spent a god-awful amount of time just looking. She didn't even buy anything most of the time. But at least it was almost over now and he could get back and be reunited with his friends. "Why yeah, just come on lady, when you need to get back to your estate already," he said quietly, as Yukari just gave him a wholesome smile before going back to looking around at the city. Suddenly Arya's mother stopped, seemingly thinking for a moment. Naruto mentally screamed before she turned back to them with a pleasant smile. "Alright, that seemed like everything. Now let's head home." Naruto sighed in relief before the thought of stone reared back into his head. Didn't your son want us to stop by before we head back?" he asked. Arya's mother frowned at the mention of him. It was clear she didn't want to go back for another interaction with the man. But why was the real question here? So seemingly deflecting Naruto's question, she began to walk back to the housing district of the upper ring. "Oh, if it was that important, he'll meet us at the mansion, right?" Naruto got a strange feeling from the woman, but seeing as it was getting late and Tatsumi and Doya were back at the mansion by themselves, Naruto didn't want to arouse any suspicions. "Right," he groaned, following the mother. But not before performing a single hand sign as a copy of himself appeared in the alleyway next to them. Giving his copy a slight nod before he jumped off into the rooftops, Naruto didn't make a peep the rest of the way back. Except to tell Yukari to be quiet about what she just saw. Soon they had made it back to the mansion. At this point though the sun had completely gone down and they were bathed in the surreal red moonlight. Walking up the steps, Arya's mother stopped for a moment and turned back for a moment to the two. "I do apologize for my son's abrasiveness. He's never really gotten along with the family ever since he was little. I only hope that one day that he can come back home with a..." She was suddenly cut off as the front doors to the estate were busted open as a guardsman sprinted up to the trio. Sweat rolled down his cheek as he reloaded the rifle in his hands. "Mladdie," he started, looking back behind him. More guards could be seen sprinting to various parts of the mansion. "Oh my, what's the matter?" Arya's mother asked, quickly approaching the man with great concern. Quickly waving her off, he composed himself before trying to explain the situation. "It's the estate, it being..." Before he could finish though, a bright flash of light appeared behind the mansion, followed by a powerful explosion that shook the group violently. Yukari held onto Naruto's side as the guard covered the mother with care. All while the blonde stood his ground, peering towards the now erupting fireball. As the shockwave passed, it seemed like Arya's mother went into a frantic-like state as she gripped the soldier's collar tightly. "Arya. The shed. Get the rest of the guards to that area immediately. Do not let whoever it is breach those doors," she ordered. The man hesitantly nodded before looking back towards Naruto with a rather concerned expression. "Why yes ma'am, now please we have to get you to the safe room immediately," he instructed, beginning to pull her towards the mansion doors. Gunfire now erupting in the distance. "Wait a minute, where's Arya and my husband?" she asked, looking over his shoulder into their home. "Lady Arya arrived back home a few hours ago with that boy and your husband is nowhere to be seen. But we must get you to safety before these attackers reach the actual mansion itself," he informed her. Naruto quickly picked up on how Tatsumi had only returned and not Doya. The mother quickly turned around, looking back to the blonde. "Naruto please, you have to find them for me. Please. Those attackers won't leave anything left of them if they find out who they are. Please," she pleaded, her eyes welling with tears as the guard continued to try and get her inside. Naruto in the meantime was in deep thought. From what he had figured out, something was not okay with his family and this was most likely a justified attack. But on the other hand, he needed to find Tatsumi and Doya so he could get the two to safety. After another moment of thought, Naruto made up his mind. He wasn't going to look for them, but it would be a good excuse to get inside the mansion without raising much suspicion from the guards. Alright, I'll find them. How go? Get out of here and get to safety. The woman's eyes filled with joy as she gave him a tight hug, but finally the guard managed to get her away and the two disappeared inside the mansion. Trying to get away from the ever-approaching danger. The Uzumaki sighed, not liking the fact he had to lie, but these people didn't seem right at all. There was more to the story and he absolutely had to investigate it further. Slowly closing his eyes, he calmed his mind for a moment. Kurama, can you hear me? Naruto asked in his mindscape, hoping to hear from his trusted companion. A moment of silence passed until the blonde felt 4 tiny paws land on his shoulder. Opening his eyes, he looked over to see the tiny fox grinning down at him. I could hear the explosion from a few blocks away. Finally some fun, right? He growled, looking up towards the rising smoke before snickering at the Uzumaki. More Imperial Guard are on their way here and this place will be surrounded in about 20 minutes. The blonde nodded as he grabbed hold of Kurama and placed him on the stone pathway below. I need to find Tatsumi and Doya. Can you pick up their scent at all? Anything? The kitsune shook his head. Nothing, kid, I told you I can't sense or smell anything right now. I'm not like your normal animal. Something is actively blocking my abilities and frankly it's annoying me. He grumbled. Naruto looked down to the fox and then to Yukari before making up his mind. Alright then, if they're both in there somewhere it's my job to find them, he announced, tightening his headband. Where are you going, Naruto? You're not going to get hurt, are you? Yukari suddenly asked, tugging on his jacket once more. She looked up at him once more with her big blue eyes, pleading with the man to answer her question. Naruto grinned before dropping to one knee. Listen, I need to go find our friends. Doya and Tatsumi, remember? He asked, placing a hand on her shoulder to try and reassure her. She brightened up at the mention of the two. Oh yeah. The really funny boy and the nice lady. Well, it's my job to go and rescue them if they're in any danger, so I need to make sure there aren't any bad guys in the building hurting them. Is that alright? He asked, his ocean blue eyes meeting her sky blue eyes. If it wasn't for the darker hair, Yukari could really look like his younger sister, couldn't she? Yukari gave pause for a moment, seemingly playing out what he had just said in her head for a moment before making up her mind. She gave him a look of determination and approval. Why yeah, just come back please. Naruto smiled, standing back up with a smile. Of course I will, but just to make sure you're not lonely, here. He exclaimed, forming a sign with one of his hands as a puff of smoke appeared around the man. An identical copy of himself soon appeared beside him. Yukari's eyes widened in amazement as an exact copy of Naruto now stood in front of her. Whoa. You can make clones of yourself? She asked, smiling and inspecting the copy. The Uzumaki gently rubbed her head before looking over to the clone. Take care of her. He commanded with a nod. The clone in turn nodded back. You got it, boss. He waved before scooping up Yukari and jumping away into the rooftops of the vast imperial city. Soon just leaving Naruto by himself with his trusty-tailed beast. Alright Kurama, let's see what's going on in there. He said to the kitsune, who in turn nodded before turning back into a ray of orange chakra. Flowing back into Naruto's seal. After the return was complete, the blonde took off in a sprint into the main hall of the mansion and up the stairs towards where their rooms had lied. Naruto sprinted down the halls of the now eerily quiet estate. As Kurama had explained earlier, whatever was blocking even his sage mode would have some difficulty in locating his friends, but even still he was not one to listen. Slowly closing his eyes and calming his mind. The familiar feeling of natural energy filled his chakra paths and soon enough orange pigment appeared above his eyes as he entered the enhanced mode. The blonde suddenly came to a stop right before a corner, effortlessly missing a panting Tatsumi. Who stumbled back with surprise. He quickly raised his sword up defensively before realizing it was Naruto, getting ready to take a swing at him. Hey, relax. It's just me. Naruto shouted out, grabbing the edge of the sword and easily ripping it from his hands. Tatsumi's eyes went wide and then filled with relief once it registered in his head that it was just Naruto. See, crap Naruto. I thought you bailed on me, where have you been? He frantically asked. Yukari and I have been with Arya's mother all day, where's Doya at? He demanded, handing the blade back to the worried and panicked boy. He seemed to feel lost without. Once it was securely back in his hands he fully realized his question. Tilting his head, what do you mean? I thought she was with you? He shot back, sheathing the blade back into its proper position on his back. Naruto cupped his hand on his chin, trying to piece the clues together. Who would take Doya? Could it have been the parents? Even so, where would they have taken her? Arya's mother said she was with you, that could only mean. He started, the large windows bathing them both in red. But before he could continue, Tatsumi pointed up into the air. Look. He gasped, drawing the blonde's attention. He slowly followed the boy's fingers until his eyes laid on what had drawn his friend's gaze. 5 figures stood in front of the large moon on what appeared to be suspension wires. They all menacingly looked down at the estate. To Naruto's eyes they all appeared to be of various height and stature. Seemingly giving off an aura of seriousness, strangely reminding him of the Akatsuki in a way. But that was never good. The guards of the estate seemed to think so too as they all ran out in droves towards the group of 5. Immediately opening fire at them. In response the group all dispersed at lightning speed. Effortlessly dodging their bullets. Those must be the people Arya's parents were talking about. Tatsumi said, gripping his sword with determination. Naruto looked over to the boy, he could see it in his eyes. He was determined to make sure these people didn't hurt the girl. He seemed to have the spirit, but Naruto thought it was in the wrong place. Yeah, they must be Night Raid. He said aloud, watching the group move with excellent coordination against the droves of guards. Easily dispatching them with ease, so this is them. He thought to himself. I'm going to go find Arya. You find Doya. Tatsumi suddenly shouted out before turning on his heels and bolting towards the open window at the end of the long hallway they sat in. Tatsumi, wait. Naruto called out for him, but it was already too late. The would-be warrior had already jumped out the window and went sprinting out in the darkness of the estate on his own. Meanwhile, leaving the blonde to deal with the situation at hand, knowing there wasn't enough time to chase after him. Naruto resolved in finding Doya, if she even was here. Using Sage Mode he tried his best to locate the girl, but like Kurama had stated it was getting extremely difficult. Like trying to find pervy Sage in a topless bar. But jokes aside it felt all hazy to him, even with his enhanced abilities, it was taking too long to locate her, as the sounds of battle only increased. But after about another minute of searching he was finally able to locate her heartbeat, but it wasn't good, he could tell it was fading and fading fast. Luckily for him, she still seemed to be on the estate. Not knowing how strong this night raid truly was, he called out to Kurama, his eyes filling with urgency and a bit of anger. Why wasn't he more careful? Whoever harmed Doya would truly pay for this. Bright orange chakra began to flicker around his body as the fox quickly supplied the blonde with his energy. Kurama was also quite annoyed with this whole matter, he may have still been new to the whole friends thing, but Doya had come off as a pretty likable person, he too would make sure that whoever did this would truly not enjoy the rest of their lives. No matter how short it may be. Kurama, you ready? Naruto asked confidently as the orange chakra of the 9 tails now swirled around him violently. Let's go be heroes, brat, I was a bit bored anyway. He snickered in response, giving Naruto the last bit of chakra he needed. The blonde's body and uniform started to glow a bright yellow as black lines appeared all over, extending to his hands. A long orange and black haori materialized over his already glowing body. A pair of chakra horns appeared in his hair. While his eyes turned to a dark orange, beautiful chakra flames formed all around him. Multiple unknown symbols also appeared all over his body. Giving him an almost holy-like appearance. Let's go. He commanded as he now entered his 9 tails chakra mode. Bashing the window open he jumped out with ease to the ensuing battle below. Meanwhile, down below the blonde, Bullet had been busy killing or maiming various guardsmen, effortlessly dodging their attacks before slicing a man in half without an ounce of remorse. He paused for a moment as an overwhelming amount of energy could be felt, stopping him in his tracks, as well as the last guard fell to the ground dead before him. What the hell is this? Bullet stuttered out in his armor. Feeling the amount of energy surge through the area, in all his years he had never felt this much power from a single person, and Curcio even began to get uneasy at so much power. And soon enough Shield jumped down next to him and raised her Esdith in defense. A pair of oversized scissors with a panda on the handles. I can feel it too. This doesn't feel right. She narrowed into the estate, getting ready for anything. Mind see anything? Bullet called out overhead, looking up to the duo who had remained on the wires. A rather short girl with twin ponytails sat above the estate with Lubbock, a green-haired boy who looked to be around the same age as her. She leveled her extravagant-looking rifle, staring through the sight. No, nothing. She announced, continuously scanning the estate until saw a brief flash over orange light from inside. Wait. What is that? She panicked, preparing to fire her rifle. Whatever the thing was, it was coming right at them, bursting the window of the estate in an instant. Both Shield and Bullet looked up in confusion. He stopped cold as an orange blur flew from the window, landing on the ground in front of them at lightning speeds. Humming through Night Raid. Naruto shouted out as he sprinted straight towards a shell-shocked Bullet. Who in the turn shook away his shock, raising his spear up in defense. Naruto mentally sighed, why couldn't people just listen to him for once? He thought to himself as a ball of yellow chakra formed in one of his hands. Meanwhile Shield began to charge at the man with her signature weapon, ready to slice him in half and end this fight in a second. But the Uzumaki had other plans. Seemingly like the girl would get her kill she cleared her mind, readying herself mentally, I'm sorry. Shield whispered out as Esdith's blades made contact with his stomach. She waited for the familiar feeling of the blade slicing through flesh, but all she could feel was as if they had been brutally stopped. Huh? She asked herself, looking up at her current opponent. Her eyes widened in shock when she saw what happened to her blades. They harmlessly got stuck around the blonde, who looked down at her with a smirk. Impossible, she gasped, just before a glowing fist made contact with her cheek. She was sent flying away from the Uzumaki, her ecstasy dropping to the ground as Naruto looked after her with a bit of concern. "Sorry about that," he announced, seeing her land unceremoniously on the ground. But he was quickly brought out of it as he narrowly dodged the red spear of Incursio. Jumping up into the sky, Naruto shouted down at the man in the armored suit, "I'll give you one chance to move." "No can do," Bullet announced, throwing back his spear into the sky like a missile. Naruto clenched his teeth together, shooting back down towards his next opponent. Effortlessly dodging the spear, Naruto put forward his Rasengan, light orange chakra burning off of it. The air sizzled as it approached the armored man, who tried to brace for the attack. "Rasengan!" Naruto roared out as the swirling mass of chakra smashed into Bullet with enough force to crack the earth beneath him. His armored gauntlets quickly cracked and burst away before Naruto's attack forced the man to the ground. His armor cracked as the Rasengan detonated, resulting in a massive explosion, followed by a violent shockwave, blinding the other members of Night Raid. Naruto slowly stood triumphantly atop the man, looking down at him. Bullet's armor was chipped and gone in several places, but he was still alive. "Stay down," Naruto announced before jumping off of him, looking up at the last two remaining members of Night Raid in the area. Mine's eyes widened as the scene finally came into view. "Bullet. Shield," she shouted out, clearly angered at the easy defeat of her two fellow members. "Alright, you piece of trash, prepare to die," she added, aiming her pumpkin down at the Uzumaki and relentlessly laying on the trigger. Naruto disappeared in a blink of orange light as the bullets harmlessly dug themselves into the ground. Mine's eyes widened as his ability as Lubbock raised his crossed tails ready to defend the team's signature sniper. "Where'd he go? This is what we get when you screw up the mission scheduling, Lubbock. We were supposed to be here yesterday," she stammered as a crackle of orange chakra appeared between the two. The green-haired boy's eyes widened in disbelief at what he had just heard. "Me? It was your job too." "I'm right here," Naruto shouted out, appearing between them, shocking them both. But even still they raised both of their Tigu in defense. But it wouldn't do them any good, even for well-trained assassins, they just weren't faster than Naruto. Who in turn grabbed both of their heads and almost comically smacked them against each other, effectively knocking them both out and eliminating them as threats. Naruto grabbed them both by their collars and gently floated them down to the ground, where he laid them both just as Shield began to regain consciousness. She groggily watched it happen before seeing the glowing man jump away back into the forest. Naruto crashed through the woods at top speed, closing in on Doya's life force. "Please be okay," he said aloud before catching sight of the warehouse above the treeline. Guessing that's where Doya was, Naruto leaped into the air and into the clearing in front of the building's massive metal doors. Just in time to see Tatsumi standing defensively in front of Arya as another person rapidly approached them. The young woman with long black hair that reached down to her knees raised a sword at his friend, her blood-red eyes staring right through Tatsumi towards Arya. She got into a striking stance in her dark sleeveless mini dress, clearly ready to cut his friend to reach the girl. Naruto had to intervene. "Tatsumi," the blonde shouted out as he entered the clearing, sprinting as fast as he could to the boy, but suddenly he picked up Doya's heartbeat as it went haywire, rapidly picking up in beats and then almost to none at all. "Huh? Naruto?" Tatsumi asked as he lowered his guard, looking past the woman. "Naruto?" Akame asked, turning around to see the flaming figure sprinting towards her. She gasped at the sight before raising Murasame in an attempt to stop him, but as Akame would soon learn, nothing could stop Naruto once he made up his mind. Dodging her incoming swing with ease, the blonde jumped over the blade, coming mere inches away from her face. Ocean blue meeting crimson. Time seemed to stop for her. This was the boy that the woman seemed to mention in her dream. What the hell's going on? She thought to herself as Naruto passed by her, Rasengan instantly appearing in his hand. "Out of the way," he roared as Akame watched, his eyes full of determination as he slammed his Rasengan straight into the large metal doors. They tried to hold but were almost instantly blown off their hinges. Slamming on the ground, Naruto slid to a stop inside, his eyes searching. "Doya!" Naruto yelled out as he began to scan the warehouse. But soon he wished he hadn't. First the smell hit him and then what awaited his eyes almost made him lose his lunch. Human bodies and remains were scattered throughout the room. More bodies were laid out in cages along the edge of the warehouse. It looked like something out of a horror film. This place was a torture room. Once Naruto realized this, he flared his chakra in anger. How could he be so stupid? The signs were all there. But no matter what, he needed to find Doya. "Doya? Are you here?" Naruto yelled out, trying to find her. He couldn't sense her anymore, damn it, this must have been the source of the jamming. He thought to himself, not wanting to even think about what had happened to his friend while he was gone. Stay away from her. A feminine voice suddenly shouted out through the dimly lit warehouse. I know that voice. It's Sao. Tatsumi suddenly shouted out, running in behind the blonde with Arya, who seemed to look away at the sight of the gruesome scene. Meanwhile, the boy didn't even question why flames seemed to be enveloping his body. Walking past Naruto, Tatsumi shouted out her name once more, Sao. Tatsumi? A voice called back a moment later. Jumping at the response, Tatsumi jumped the railing. Where are you? He called back as he prepared to sprint farther into the warehouse. Her voice was cut off as a loud crash was heard in the warehouse. Sao? Tatsumi called out back into the darkness once again, but no response. Beginning to panic, he looked back up at Naruto, almost pleading. The Uzumaki cleared his mind, listening for the tiniest of noises. After a few moments, he jerked his head over to the far left corner of the large warehouse. The sound of a chair being moved ever so slightly could be made out, over there. He shouted, jumping the railing alongside Tatsumi and sprinting into the darkness, Arya trying her best to keep up with him. They all passed the horrors the family had left behind, but they paid that no mind, reaching the women in distress was their only goal. But little did they know that Akame gently walked into the warehouse, she raised Murasame once more and began to follow them from the shadows. The two kept sprinting through the warehouse until they came across a dimly lit area. One candle hung above the cell-like areas. The duo looked under the candle to see two figures strapped in chairs. Naruto narrowed his eyes, beginning to walk forward. Doya and another woman that he could only assume was Sao were both strapped down and bleeding heavily in the chairs. Doya weakly looked up towards Naruto with a bloody smirk. Took you long enough, blondie. I almost had to break out of here by myself. She coughed, trying to pull against her strengths, but to avail. The sight made Uzumaki's blood boil with rage, his chakra cloak flared as he walked into the candlelight fully. Tatsumi readied his blade for anything. Don't come any closer. The voice shouted out of the shadows as the two were forced to stop as Arya's mother stepped out from the darkness, holding a detonator in her left hand and one of Doya's pistols in her right. I thought I could have trusted you too, but I guess you don't want in on our little plan here. Arya now. She shouted, firing a shot at Naruto. Naruto pushed a Kurama fist towards the round as Arya injected a vial of liquid into Tatsumi's neck before she effortlessly jumped over the duo and joined her mother. The effects were almost instant on the boy, he fell over writhing in pain. Naruto wrapped him in chakra and pushed him back into the darkness. Letting Kurama's chakra work on whatever had just been injected into the poor boy. Arya's mother perked up at the sight and abilities of Naruto's chakra cloak. Oh? We have a chakra user, do we? She asked, lowering the gun slightly. Naruto's eyes widened at the mention of chakra as he lowered his guard for only a second. Even if she did know, it didn't mean she was an ally by any means. How do you? He began as Arya began to snicker next to her. Her mother's eyes narrowed, raising the gun again. Tell me, boy, do you believe in the almighty Otsutsuki goddess like we do? You mean Kagaya? He asked with a slight gasp. She chuckled, dropping the gun as she rustled in her pocket for something. Don't make me laugh, a lower class like her. She can't even compare to our goddess. Naruto began to move forward to her, but she quickly raised the detonator up to his face, shaking her head. He was sure the building was rigged to blow, and even he didn't know if he was fast enough to get Doya, Tatsumi and his friend to safety. What do you know, lady? Why was I brought here? He growled, his chakra flaring. Arya's mother chuckled, pulling a small pearl out of her dress. So you're not an Otsutsuki then, but you possess chakra and know of the disgraced sister. Interesting. Who are you? Naruto growled once more. Sick and tired of dancing around the answer. He needed answers and he needed them now. She outstretched her arms, the pearl sticking to her palm beginning to glow. I'm one of the followers of Uzumaki Otsutsuki. The true ruler of this world. A creature who will bring order back to our lands. I just hope I've gathered enough sacrifices for her to be pleased. She announced, a certain ton of insanity filling her voice. Naruto. That's it. That's the source of the disturbance. Kurama blared in his ears, causing the Uzumaki to jump at the opportunity. Creating several clones, he got to work. The original rushed the woman, tackling her to the floor as two of his copies ripped both the girls out of their chairs, making a mad dash for the main entrance. One of them grabbing the now unconscious Tatsumi along the way. Arya tried her best to stop Naruto, but the Uzumaki effortlessly kicked her away, sending her flying into the darkness. You're too late, boy. Arya's mother screamed out, the fist that contained the pearl reached out and socked the blonde in his cheek, sending him flying away just like he had done to her daughter. Naruto smashed through the railing of the upper catwalk, right into an unsuspecting figure. Meanwhile, Arya stumbled back into her mother's view as the pearl vibrated and began to spark in her hand. Burning her skin intensely. Mother. This wasn't the plan, it's not ready, you'll die. She looked down towards her child as the power of the pearl began to overpower her. She was running out of time. Arya. You need to get out of here. I know this wasn't part of the plan, but with your father dead we have no choice. The Prime Minister must know about the appearance of a new vessel. Why, you're the only one who can do it. I'll give you enough time to make it out of here. Avenge our family. For the G goddess. She explained, her entire arm turning bubbly red as the energy from the pearl ate away at her body. Arya stood in silence for a moment before coming to her own resolve. She nodded to her mother before taking off into the darkness of the warehouse, no doubt towards one of its various secret entrances. Her mother clenched her teeth together, the skin around her eyes flaking away, the pearl now sinking into her body. Meanwhile, back on the top of the railing, Naruto found himself on top of the girl from earlier, her eyes wide with shock as she shook his shoulder. Hey, are you alright? She called out. Naruto groaned for a moment before opening his eyes. Ocean blue meeting crimson red once more. He was taken back for a moment until reality set in once again. Why, yeah, are you? He asked, pushing off of her and offering her a hand. Akame took it hesitantly. I think so. She panted, trying to control herself. She had seen a lot of things in her time of being an assassin for the Empire and as a member of Night Raid. But this certainly took the cake. Here he was. The man who the strange woman in her dreams had told her to find. Well, she had found him, now what? But sadly she didn't get the chance to ask him as the entire area became bathed in a bright red light. What's going on? She asked before suddenly feeling the warm arms of the blonde wrap around her protectively. Ong. A loud scream could be heard from down below as Kurama's chakra began to roll over his body as Naruto took off running, picking Akame up in the process. Damn it, no time. He shouted out, holding the woman tightly as the entire building went up in a violent explosion. Akame felt like she was floating as the explosion rocked her body and his. As the shockwave and heat suddenly began to die down, she slowly opened her eyes and to her amazement, she was completely unarmed. She looked up towards the man known as Naruto with astonishment as they soared through the air. Just who was this man? How could someone be so powerful? Soon enough the two skidded on the ground before coming to a stop in the clearing where they had first met. Are you alright? Naruto asked as he placed her on the ground. Kurama's chakra slowly returned back to his body. Akame made sure Murasame was still on her side as she brushed off the dust from her skirt rather hastily. I'm alright, thank you. She asked, hoping the man would pick up on formally introducing himself. Naruto stood there for a second before finally picking up on it. Oh, Naruto, I'm Naruto Uzumaki. He announced, standing proudly in his chakra cloak. Akame gave him a rather blank expression in return. But on the inside she was going nuts, so many questions and not enough time to answer them. He had to come back to headquarters with her. She needed to know more about Naruto. Akame slowly looked back towards the now smoldering rubble of the warehouse, still amazed they got out of it unharmed. What happened? What did the mother do? She asked. Naruto shook his head before crossing his arms. I don't know, but she knew what Naruto was cut off as the sound of footsteps appeared from two different directions. Both him and Akame got into a defensive stance. Pressing their backs together, they waited for the arrival of their respective group of companions. Naruto. Tatsumi shouted out as he burst through some bushes carrying Doya on his back. His friend Sayo followed close behind him. All seemed to be in a much better condition now. Naruto had instructed to heal the three, getting rid of any ailments with the Sage of Six Paths chakra he had now possessed. Akame. Leon shouted, jumping down from the trees as the remaining members of Night Raid all grouped around her, keeping their distance at the sight of Naruto, the man who only a few minutes ago had given each of them the biggest defeat of their lives. Mine pushed past the lioness with an overconfident grin as she raised pumpkin at the blonde. Akame, get away from him, he's. Kaboom. It seemed this had to wait for another time as the rubble from the building suddenly imploded in a violent wave of chakra, sending debris everywhere. Each group shielded themselves as it rained over the clearing. What the hell is going on now? Lubbock asked, shielding his face with his forearms. As the rest of Night Raid did the same. Naruto. Tatsumi called out, trying to get his bearings on his blonde companion. Both Akame and Naruto quickly jumped apart as a rather large figure came crashing down between the two, leaving a small crater where it struck. Naruto's eyes widened as he got a good look at their new opponent. A large grotesque creature, looking almost like the Ten Tails minions he had fought during the Fourth Great Shinobi World War, except this one seemed different. It was more feminine in appearance, and its usual brown skin was replaced by a shade of pale white, with green lines pulsating all over its body. And at the very center of its forehead laid the pearl from earlier. The mother, Naruto gasped as the creature aimed its sights towards him. His own eyes widened as it lunged at him, impacting with such force that the ground cracked underneath him. Locking the move with ease, Naruto narrowed his eyes before laying a fury of punches against the creature, who tried its best to dodge. It growled, grabbing hold of the blonde, slamming him to the ground with a sickening crack. It shrunk down to the same size as him before getting on top of the blonde, laying punch after punch against him. Although the blonde it was punching quickly disappeared in a thick puff of smoke, replaced by a thick piece of wood. The creature looked around before Naruto suddenly slammed the back of his heel on the thing, flattened its head in one go as it reached up grasping hold of him before he doubled it down with a micro Rasengan with his left hand, sending the creature flying back into the rubble. He smirked, looking over to Akame, who couldn't believe what she had just witnessed. All of this had just escalated from a simple assassination job. Her disbelief could also be said for both groups. Seeing the new and dangerous creature, but also the Uzumaki's raw strength. He had manhandled the thing for nothing. Whatever either of these beings were, it had certainly changed how things were going to go around here. "Harama, what is that thing?" Naruto asked, watching the creature slowly get back up from its rather rough landing inside the rubble. The Nine Tails grumbled in his mind, it's some sort of Otsutsuki creature created from that pearl, no doubt. It must have needed the energy from all those dead bodies and the woman to form, he explained. Naruto sighed as he took a step forward, making sure the creature still saw him as the primary target. "Well, how tough is that thing?" he asked, starting to form chakra in his hand, staring the thing down. "Not very, from what I can sense it gathers most of its energy from the pearl, which seems to be the cause of all our troubles. Best bet, if you destroy it, you take it out too," Naruto's trusted Kitsune informed him, as the creature took a step out of the rubble and violently roared at him once more. "Alright then, we know what to do," he grinned, taking off toward the creature at such speeds that would make his own father jealous. The Otsutsuki abomination took off towards him as well, although at a much slower speed. It raised its claws at the blonde, ready to end it all with a single strike. Certainly confident of its own abilities. Meanwhile, Naruto passed by the creature at a lightning sprint. The creature didn't even register him until after the fact. Although it did pick up on the violent swirling disc that was now embedded into its forehead. It screeched in horror, trying to grasp at the disc, but it was already too late as the area was bathed in a bright orange light. Kyuubi chakra bouncing all around the ground. "Rasen Shuriken." Naruto shouted out as one of his signature abilities did its job. Effortlessly cutting the Otsutsuki pearl in two. Effectively shattering it before a violent explosion rocked the creature's body. The shockwave passing over the blonde as he gave a confident smirk once more. Bits of the creature soon falling all around the area. "Incredible," Akame gasped in amazement, having watched his entire feat. Just who was this Naruto? She could tell why he was important though. His abilities and strength were off the charts, even compared to the various imperial generals. His willingness to put others before himself was certainly a strange trait to have in this world. Where was he raised? Was he really the key to her strange dream? But also, just what in the hell did he just fight? She continued to stare at him, her eyes glued to his glowing figure. Meanwhile, Naruto quietly walked over to the corpse of the creature. Making sure it was in fact dead. He reached down, trying to grasp the two pieces of the pearl, but it only faded away into dust. Thus taking out his only lead to what was going on in this world. "Damn it," he cursed as his cloak slowly deactivated, revealing his usual appearance to Akame. Now sensing her prying eyes, Naruto looked up to her with a small smile, beginning to approach her. "Hey, are you alright?" he asked, walking up to her. His bright ocean blue eyes met her dark crimson once more. "Why yes, thank you. What was that thing?" she asked, trying to avoid eye contact for the moment. This guy, it didn't make her head feel right. She was a trained assassin, for Pete's sake, she knew how to deal with awkward moments. But this was something completely different. Naruto sighed, looking back towards the corpse, a chakra abomination that the family had created, no doubt. "What's chakra?" Akame asked, her eyes perking up again at the strange word. Naruto laughed to himself before placing his hands on his hips. "Ah, if you don't know what that is, I'm also assuming you don't know the name Otsutsuki either." Akame shook her head as an overwhelming feeling of defeat seemed to appear on the blonde's face. "The old geezer really did send me here with nothing, damn you." He cursed aloud as Akame tilted her face. A bit confused at his mannerisms, but not at all bothered by them. Once he calmed himself down, the shinobi looked back over to the assassin. "Damn, and I was hoping Night Raid may have some leads as well. You are Night Raid, I'm assuming?" he asked, hoping he had in fact managed to stumble upon the group Kurama had mentioned earlier. Akame gave him a slight nod, about to ask him some more question that had been burning in her mind all day, but like always she was cut off by her team. "Akame. Get away from him." Mine shouted out as she ran across the clearing, her rifle loaded and ready to fire at the Uzumaki. The rest of Night Raid ready to strike out against the blonde. Naruto's eyes widened as he put his hands up in protest. Wait, come on now. Don't shoot me. I'm sorry about earlier, but you all gave me no choice." he shouted, acting like his goofy self once more, causing a small smile to appear across Akame's face. Mine growled, clearly angered at his antics, "TCH, your stupid excuses won't save you. Pumpkin." She screamed, once again trying to lay down on the trigger of her Tigu. But once again she was stopped dead in her tracks as a fluffy lion's paw smacked the weapon out of her hands, shocking the girl. "I think that's quite enough, they're mine," Leon said, grasping her friend by the collar of her shirt. "Eh?" Mine quickly protested before Leon placed her on the ground as she looked away, clearly embarrassed of the situation at hand. Meanwhile, Leon had walked up to the Uzumaki, putting up a confident stance, clearly trying to seem assertive over the blonde. "Who are you?" Naruto asked, crossing his arms, not slightly affected by her stance or demeanor. "I've been trailing you guys ever since you entered the capital." Word spread fast in the Empire's military about someone who could single-handedly defeat the three beasts and the powerful General Esdith in combat. Leon chuckled, giving the Uzumaki a playful smirk. "The name's Leon, it's a pleasure to meet you, and I presume you are Naruto Uzumaki," he announced, outstretching his arm to her. Leon was taken back for a moment as she looked hesitantly over to Akame, who gave her a truthful nod. This had to be the same Naruto she had mentioned in her dream the day before. There was no doubt about that. Well, it's a pleasure to meet you then, Naruto. Sorry about my friends over there, they're just a bit sore from the beating you gave them." She nervously chuckled. "Hey." Both Lubbock and Mine shouted out in protest. "Oh, quiet the both of you, the adults are talking," Leon teased before looking back over to Naruto with a slight bit of hesitation. "But listen, thanks for dealing with whatever the hell that thing was," she added. Naruto gave her a wide smile in return just as his group approached cautiously. Tatsumi let a now conscious Doya down while the other girl, known as Seo, gave the boy a rather tight hug. The Uzumaki opened his mouth to his friends, but the sudden sound of footsteps and shouting in the distance drew everyone's attention. "We should get out of here as quickly as we can. The mission is complete." Bullet started, looking around, his armor slowly reforming around the exposed parts of his body. "Now wait a moment," Leon protested before looking back over to Akame with a snicker. "This is the boy you were talking about, right?" she asked her best friend, gesturing back to the blonde, who looked back to Tatsumi and the rest of his group as they approached them. Akame gave her another reassuring nod. "I think so," she said softly, looking at the Uzumaki with eyes full of curiosity. She absolutely needed to know more about him. A mischievous idea crossed Leon's mind as she brought her best friend in close, pressing Akame's face in between her rather large breasts. "We should take them with us," she snickered. Akame looked up between her friend's large mounds of flesh. "Why would we do that?" Leon rolled her eyes to find out if he knows anything, and to recruit them," she said, cutting her off, already knowing her friend had some master plan for all this, like she always did. "Yes, exactly. We're always shorthanded," Leon said with a hint of disappointment in her voice. Annoyed at Akame's thick-headedness sometimes. But no matter what, she would initiate her plan and make sure it worked. After all, this was the first time Akame honestly seemed to be interested in a boy. She gently let her friend go, shrugging her shoulders. "I guess," Akame said, finally admitting defeat and looking away. At least now she could find out more about this strange boy. Leon giggled, her mischievous smile returning as she turned back towards Naruto. "Perfect. Hey, you too," she shouted, with a grin only to raise an eyebrow at the sight before her. An exact copy of the blonde now stood next to him, a small girl hugging tightly on the copy's back. Leon decided to dismiss all the questions she had for later and moved on with her offer to them. "Well, she called it an offer. You'll be coming with us," she exclaimed. Naruto's clone looked at her oddly and then to the original. "And why would we do that?" Naruto asked, crossing his arm. Leon giggled again. "Well, do you have anywhere else to go?" Naruto thought for a moment before looking over to Yukari and then towards his growing group. He knew staying in the capital wasn't a very good option, with all the violence and death that seemed to be associated with this place. "Well, no." Not liking the fact that he had to admit their current situation. Leon smiled. "And I doubt you want to be carrying around the little girl all night. Even if you can make copies of yourself," she added with a grin. "We'll find our," Naruto began, but was stopped as Tatsumi gripped onto his shoulder. "Think of Doya, she's just been through a lot. Even with your healing energy she still needs a good night's rest," he said with a small smile. Naruto thought it over for another moment. He really didn't have any other choice. Soon this place would be swarming with guards, and to top it all off, it was getting terribly cold out. He didn't want Yukari or the others to freeze. If it was just him and Tatsumi, it would have been much easier. But that just wasn't the case here. "Damn it. Fine, we'll go with you, but if you end up trying the same stuff that these people did on us, then I can assure you, you're going to regret it," he said with a glare. He may have wanted to meet up with this night raid, but he wasn't too keen on joining up with them. His first real experience of hospitality in this world had already left a bad taste in his mouth. The glare seemed to be pretty effective on Leon, who quickly put her hands up in defense. "No worries. I promise we won't do anything." "Alright. I'm sorry, I just have a lot of people to worry about here now. Especially that little one over there," he explained, looking back over to Yukari with a heartwarming smile that seemed to catch Akame's attention. His smile. She thought to herself with a soft grin. "No worries, I understand what that's like." Leon grinned before turning back over to the rest of her team, giving them a reassuring nod. They all quickly made their way up to the rest of them, weapons still at the ready, as Leon began her spiel to the rest of them. "Alright everyone. I'd like for you to all meet the newest recruits of Night Raid. Naruto and well, I didn't get the rest of their names, but they're joining us too," she cheered out. Everyone's eyes widened at the sudden news as both Tatsumi and Mine butted their way to the front of each of their respective groups, recruits. They both shouted out, staring each other in the eye. But unfortunately the group's shock was short-lived as a voice shouted out from the tree line, "Lieutenant. I heard someone over here." "Time to go," Bullet announced, scooping both Lubbock and Mine up, taking them up towards the trees. The rest of the members of Night Raid beginning to follow close behind. Akame and Leon being the last to leave. "Follow us," the lioness exclaimed, grabbing Akame by the collar as she took off to the trees. Naruto nodded, looking back towards his newly acquired group of friends who were ready to go. To brave the unknown with the blonde again. He grinned, looked up to Akame one more time. Blue meeting crimson once more. Taking off in a sprint, Naruto jumped into the trees, Yukari now having been moved to his back while the clone had scooped up Doya. While Tatsumi carried his friend off. And soon enough everyone had cleared the area. Leaving just the corpse of the creature and the rubble as an aftermath. Akame knew deep down inside that things were about to change forever. As soon as Night Raid and Naruto's group had dispersed from the area, a fury of Imperial soldiers flooded the area. All of them quickly went in and secured the clearing. All of them gasped at the sight of the creature before them as their commanding officer walked into the clearing after it was marked as secure. He strolled up to the creature with a disgusted look. Kicking it a few times before a small female guard came up to him, giving him a quick salute. "Lieutenant Stone, there's no sign of the attackers, but we did find the body of your father in the estate, sir," she informed him. Looking at him with a bit of concern, it was his family after all. Stone seemed unfazed by the news. "And my mother? Little sister?" he asked. The guard shook her head. "No sign of them, sir, but I can only assume the worst." The Imperial officer sighed, looking over to the smoldering ruins and then to the creature once more. "Keep searching." "And your father, sir?" she asked, getting slightly worried with his stoic take on the entire situation. "Burn the body," he instructed, quickly dismissing the guardsman. As he made sure she was out of earshot, he growled under his breath, "Bastard doesn't even deserve that." Meanwhile, above the Imperial officer, the clone Naruto had sent out earlier simply shook his head before dispelling himself. Hearing everything he needed to, Stone would need to be questioned soon enough. What if godlike Naruto was in Akame ga Kill? End here, and thanks for watching my video till the end.